Good evening and welcome to the September 10th meeting of the Olympia City Council. We have a quorum of the members of the council here this evening. Councilmember Rogers is excused and our mayor is absent. He is actually on assignment, if you will. Mayor Buxbaum is attending the Asia Pacific Cities Summit in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. The summit is jointly sponsored by Kaohsiung and also by the city of Brisbane, Australia. This year's theme, they're in their 17th year of holding these summits. This year's theme is Reshaping Urbanomics of Cities, City Challenges, City Solutions. Our mayor will moderate a panel discussion on Harbor City Dialogue, Critical Path for Asia's Marine Cities. I'm really pleased that Mayor Buxbaum is able to reach out to other communities and other countries. I believe that what he's doing is helping build long-term relationships. This particular summit has representatives from over 68 cities and 5 continents attending in Kaohsiung. And it may be important for me to mention that funding for the mayor's travel and accommodations is being provided by the Asia Pacific Cities Summit and no local funds are involved. So welcome to our meeting. Let's just move to an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Great. I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. We have an agenda this evening. Let's move to our second item, which is a special recognition, and I turn to Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Am I supposed to call you something different when you're acting as the mayor?
I don't think so.
Okay. I just want to make sure I have the protocol.
Mayor for
Calling
the
is
night.
actually not allowed.
I'm calling not allowed. That is one of our council. Anyway. Okay. Well, so I'm really excited to read this proclamation declaring today. Well, you'll find out. So whereas suicide is now the third leading cause of death in Washington State and the third leading cause of death among people ages 15 to 24 in Washington State, whereas 44 people committed suicide in Thurston County in 2012, and whereas in the United States, one person commits suicide every 14 minutes, whereas the City of Olympia is committed to protecting all members of its community, and whereas countywide suicide prevention efforts should be developed and encouraged to the maximum extent possible, and whereas strategies need to be developed and implemented to reduce the stigma associated with the consumer of mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention services, and whereas 50% of people who die by suicide use a firearm and guns stored in the house are used for suicides 40 times more often than for self-protection, and whereas a great many suicides are preventable. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim September 10th, 2013 as Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day, and call upon the people of the City of Olympia to learn the warning signs of suicide, increase public awareness that suicide is a preventable health problem, and help support those in the community whose lives have been touched by suicide. Signed in the City of Olympia, Washington, this 10th day of September 2013, Olympia City Council, Nathaniel Jones, Mayor Pro Tem. And this is a really important conversation and issue for our community to have. I personally lost a friend to suicide when I was in high school, and hadn't I known those warning signs, we all might have been able to prevent it. And so at this point, I'd like to call up Ann Varpness from the Catholic Community Services to receive the proclamation from Mayor Pro Tem Jones. And Anne, if you'd like to make your way to the podium, we'd love to hear any words you have to say.
I'm supported here by my
So, Anne, just hang on just a second. Jay's going to help you out.
Thank you very much for allowing us to be here tonight and to speak. I'm here with my coworkers from Catholic Community Services, and this is a little ironic because almost 6 years ago, I was sitting before the council and the mayor at the time and actually being interviewed for a council position on an empty seat. And that same evening, my son decided to commit suicide. So he went on a high-speed chase and was shot. But by the grace of God, he is alive and living. And it's very traumatic. You think this could never happen to you or to your family. You have no idea. I didn't see the signs. I didn't know. He was receiving mental health services. And unfortunately, he went that path. So it's very difficult. I now work with families who are dealing with crisis with their children. And it's a very rewarding job. I mean, I love doing it. So I thank you for acknowledging this and for bringing this to light, because it's a very difficult thing that families go through when there's an attempt or when it actually does happen. It's very, very difficult. So thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to be here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your work in our community. I would turn to my council member and ask if you have any comments or questions. Please.
As probably most of you know, I'm a psychologist in practice, and I actually deal with the issue of suicide pretty much on a weekly basis. And I'm very grateful to everyone in the community, Catholic Community Services, Community Youth Services, the Crisis Line, the Teen Line, all those other places that help provide outreach for people who are contemplating suicide. Because suicide is always about loss of hope and loss of perceiving yourself as having options. And just by talking to people, you can end up realizing that you have more options than you thought you did when you're depressed, and just kind of see one way to go. And so I really appreciate that your personal story, but also I think that probably just about everybody in this room has been touched by suicide in some way. And so I think it is something that we should really take seriously and really tackle head on, because again, we just have a big problem with suicide in this community and nationwide for that matter. But I think this is, we should, think globally but act locally, and I think this is one of those times where we can really make a difference, where people can learn the signs of suicide risk and then reach out to people and be aware of the resources that are in this community for people who are contemplating suicide. So I really appreciate your being here for this.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I just want to echo some of those comments and just say that the more I learn about this issue, its prevalence, the comments that most people have been touched one way or another, it's astounding. And so I just want to thank you for your work here in Olympia and the important work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jim.
We have a second special recognition this evening. I'd like to introduce our new walking patrol officer.
I'd be happy to do that for you,
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones. We actually have a double dip tonight. The item is introduced as our new walking patrol officer, Jeff Herbig, who is here. And also we're going to have Lieutenant Paul Lauer talk about our recently organized downtown response team. So just as a little background as they walk up to the podium, in 2012, Olympia voters provided funding for the city to provide extra public safety in our community. And one of the first things we did was reintroduce the downtown walking patrol. So Jeff Herbig has stepped up to that task as our new downtown walking patrol officer. He started this summer. And then Paul Lauer, a lieutenant in the police department, has also become the new head of our downtown response team, which is a multi-departmental and multi-jurisdictional response to issues and problems in our downtown. So both of them have a few words to share with you this evening.
All right, so I tried to put a couple slides really quickly together for you folks. And bear with me here because I had a few other things. I'm sorry. Bear with me here because I had a few other things in mind, so I'll skip some of this. But at the beginning of the summer, I came and met all of you folks about the walking patrol assignment. One of the things that I had done behind the scenes was put out a survey to some of our downtown folks to see what our services were like from the police department. And this is a particular question that was asked that I really wanted to take a look at and see how we could turn that gold color into the blue. How can we become more effective to help out the problems downtown? So to that end, part of it is our walking patrol, but also some of the other things that we've been up to. If we could have the next slide, are these things. This is what your department, police department, has been working on lately. We have been engaging our downtown community with special projects going on. So, for example, some of the placemaking projects that are underway in downtown Olympia, our police department has been getting involved in, as well as like the Washington Center for the Performing Arts construction. We're taking active roles in that. And you're going to see the train tunnel downtown being cleaned by code enforcement pretty quickly, and we're taking a big part in that too. We've been focusing, as I promised you folks back several months ago, on our hot spots downtown, which have included the Artesian Well area. Myself and Jeff and several other officers have been trying to make daily, hourly trips through there to physically pick up garbage if we see it, and to make sure things are peaceful and that folks are able to get their water and have a good time in our downtown area. The other thing that I wanted to point out, because it's kind of my department too, is our new training officers. As you've all heard, the police department is growing, and we've had some staffing issues this year from a lot of retirements and folks moving on. And we have a whole ton of brand new recruits coming in. So I've had the pleasure of being able to work with those recruits and their training officers to get down in our downtown walking, to kind of augment the hours of operation of our walking patrol, as well as work on some special projects that you guys will be hearing about hopefully soon. But these recruits, it's been, I guess it gives them a chance to get down, shake hands with folks downtown, meet the people down there, take a look at our alleyways, take a look at our hot spots down there, and see what they may be able to do to help out from a policing perspective in that. We have been opening communications with some of the social service agencies throughout Thurston County and in the Olympia area, where, as it all lists up there, you can kind of read through some of the things that we're up to. But as City Manager Steve Hall pointed out, one of the projects that we've had underway, I guess project isn't the right thing, a group of folks from within the city, all different departments, code enforcement, public works, probation, just about every department we could reach out and touch, have all got together to, and I'm going to use a term, silos, to kind of break down the departmental silos and share communications and start looking at the downtown core as a city agency to see what we can all get done now. It's a very action-oriented group. This is not, we are in these meetings to get something done. So we try and pick things that we can get out and put our boots on the pavement and fix right away. So that is what Steve Hall was referring to. Very happy and proud of this group. This is a bunch of good folks within your city, departments here that want to do something right now. It's not the, it's to get the stuff done now type of attitude, and we are doing that out there. You may have seen one maybe stark example was the well area about 3-4 weeks ago was large graffiti all over the walls on both sides. It was kind of a mess. Within, after the meeting, we had that thing cleaned up within a day, all repainted. The probation crew even got out there, and the actual well itself, the nice decorative landscaping there was all cleaned, power sprayed, sharpened up. So very proud of that group, and they are underway and working very hard for you folks. So one of the biggest things, though, of course, is our walking patrol. So I am going to step aside and let Officer Herbig tell you about what he's been up to downtown, show you a few things. Number-wise, we tried to quickly put together some numbers so you had some data to look at. So next slide, and this is Officer Herbig.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak and meet. As you can imagine, the demand, so to speak, for the walking patrol position has been immense. Folks are either vaguely aware that they had a walking patrol and lost it and not sure where it got resumed, They are always expressing to me the immediacy of having an officer out of the car on foot just in the community, and also the ability to be much more approachable. They can call me, they can flag me down, they can whistle, they can do whatever they need to do to get a hold of me, and we can talk on an informal basis rather than the kind of formalized, I have some sort of issue or criminal complaint. I pick up the phone, I go through the 911 kind of process, or I call dispatch, and this is a much more informal. And what I found is folks obviously appreciative of the position, curious what I'm able to do, what our goals are, and they, of course, want to know how to see me more or how we get more officers. So right now I'm being real honest with folks that we have limited hours. My work week is pretty well set. The exposure that I can provide, the things that I can do. Initial response and initial opportunities to just be impactful have been really good, have been really great. As you can see, there's 300 calls for service. I guess that should be with an asterisk. I have shared my department cell number with businesses, with folks at large, with stakeholders downtown, so if they have just a gee whiz question, or if they need an immediate type of response, or if they have issues that they have shared with me in the past, and they're maybe once again uncomfortable with, is this really a police matter, is this a criminal type thing, where do I go with this problem? I've encouraged them to use that resource, call me. If it is an enforcement type action, of course, then I broadcast that, respond to it as an officer would from a vehicle, and we've been busy. We've been extremely busy. The results of that is a lot of enforcement. Some of it informal, bringing folks up to speed on the new sit-lie ordinance. A lot of it has been citation-based and the formal procedures through court, and a lot of it has just been bad things happening and results are, law enforcement action has taken. Some examples, riding down alleyways and folks using IV drugs. Obviously, we're not going to negotiate that. We're not going to discuss that. That is an enforcement contact. People are getting arrested. People are going to jail. So there has been a lot of that. The early part of my time downtown was a lot of business contacts, a lot of meet and greets, that kind of stuff. Frankly, as the enforcement piece has increased, or as people have reached out for assistance with specific matters to their location, the time available to do the meet and greets has kind of tapered off a bit. But because those initial contacts have been made, folks have my number, they see my bright yellow shirt, which I'm normally wearing on a bike, they feel comfortable knowing that I'm down there. And even if I haven't seen them in a while, they'll say, oh yeah, I see you, or I've just, the presence there is recognized. I'd point out number 4, if it wasn't obvious, we in Thurston County and Olympia specifically are experiencing an explosion in IV drug use. Those are really not my words. That's kind of folks in the community who are calling in and complaining about needles, people at the service end of things who are doing the needle exchange and other stuff, talking about an influx of folks seeking their services, and then just the reality of enforcement contacts and arrest. And two groups that I would point out, our local Timberline Library branch, which generally employed a single security officer, is now on a regular basis employing 3 folks, which seems unusual for a small neighborhood branch, but what they're experiencing is an influx of folks who are seeking to use the bathrooms, the parking lots, the facility to either do IV drugs, make connections, drug deals, whatever. There's a real problem with that. And then just recently I was talking to the transit director down at IT, and she was mentioning that her staff has had a similar experience with an explosion of that type of behavior in and around their facility. So it's not just my impression, it's really the community is starting to notice an uptick in that, and I don't know if that's attributable to just demand, or we have an influx of folks who are IV drug users by habit, or if the price of drugs have dropped. I don't know what the social component is, but that is right now a very big issue in downtown. And on just a kind of a teamwork basis, a lot of the groups that I've met with have invited me or have asked if I would be willing to speak, give presentations, share information, kind of best work practices type stuff. And so I've had several meetings, several interviews, or not interviews, several, I guess, informal classes with different groups, and that calendar continues into the future. So if there is groups that would like to have an officer come and talk, or they have questions, or it's a business group and they have specific needs, I've made myself available to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Questions, comments from council members? Janine. Council Member Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. I just want to thank Jeff for the tremendous job you're doing. I have heard nothing but positive comments over the last few months. Has it only been 2-3 months? How long is it? I don't know how long it's been.
Since June.
June, okay.
Yes.
And people are thrilled to have your presence downtown, as are we. And I look forward to the day where we can hope that you have a partner downtown in the near future. I'm just curious, you talked about the drug issue a bit and the explosion of drug use. And is there anything as a community, I know in the past we were part of the narcotics team, or what more could we do as a community, at the police level, to help tackle that? Are you...
So the first question, Olympia Police currently are not participating in the Thurston County Narcotics Task Force, which is that joint agency, and that is strictly, if I understand it, just a manning decision. We had to pull back, or we were not able to supply a detective to that agency because we were still trying to scramble and cover patrol positions. So that obviously is a huge help. Just like anybody, if you are rooting for the home team and it comes time to allocate resources or work on specific hotspots and stuff, clearly not having an officer present or detective present in that group has to have some impact as to where resources are. My personal experience is the IV drug use crowd, the folks who engage in that behavior. It's a very habitual thing. It is not something that is picked up and dropped, for entertainment or something they do on a weekend, or it's a crazy whatever. This is a behavior that an addiction, and it is, an addiction-based behavior that drives their whole life, and it's not something that without intervention or other stuff that they're going to be able to easily step back from. So the other piece of the puzzle in downtown specifically is we have a lot of street outreach for those folks, which is great for the intended purpose of clean needle exchange and that stuff, but I think you also have the unintended consequences of folks who maybe come from poor surrounding counties or counties that don't have that street type outreach coming into Olympia. And, obviously the programs have made it easier for them to function. And if it's not in a healthy, respectful way, then obviously I believe in the community gets left with kind of dealing with the uptick in that behavior.
Yeah, I bring it up only because I've been on council 4 years, and it just seems as though in the last year in particular, all of a sudden we're hearing more and more about the amount of needles being found in the streets and the alleys, and that, as you say, there's been an explosion. And so I just think that that's the next thing we really need to tackle as the City of Olympia, and just really reaching out to the community as well as what can we do about this explosion of drug use and help those, because it is, I believe, a disease. Our psychologist here can probably clarify, but it's very sad to me to see so many people addicted, and hopefully we can do something to move forward in that regard. And again, I just want to thank you for the tremendous job you're doing downtown. We really appreciate it.
Councilmember Langer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? I really appreciate, I've also just heard nothing but good from your presence downtown, so I really appreciate what you're doing and the energy you bring to the position, and I think the respect that people show you, and I think that says a lot about how you work, and I really appreciate that. The thing that I think is really key here is the partnering that you and the rest of the department is doing with the other social service agencies and other, the PBIA, the ODA, and so on, because it's really the problems we have downtown will not be solved by law enforcement. No matter how great you are, no matter how great the Olympia Police Department is, these are issues that are much broader than that, and I think we need to tackle them on that broad basis. And by everybody working together, I think we'll get much better results and are much more likely to get a handle on even these temporary upswings and things because we're all working together as a community. And so I really appreciate your presence there and the department's efforts to work with everyone else to get a handle on problems and to hopefully not just kind of chase the latest fire, but to actually prevent fires from happening in the first place. Sorry about mixing that fire department metaphor there, but I think you know what I'm trying to get at here. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I really encourage the police department to continue partnering with all the other agencies that are working hard to try to improve downtown Olympia.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Thank you guys so much for this work. It's been really nice. In fact, Steve and I were having a meeting last week, and a citizen walked up and said, downtown is looking better. And earlier this evening, we heard a report from the Ambassador Program, and they're working hand in hand with you to really make our downtown be a lot better place and move towards that goal of it being safe and welcoming for all. So thank you guys for all that hard work. Hopefully in the next budget, we can get you some backup and restore our participation in the narcotics task force. I did want to address that for a half a second. In my day job, I facilitate the Thurston County Drug Action Team under a contract with a Northwest high-intensity drug trafficking area, which is up and down the I-5 corridor. And it is, without a doubt, we're seeing an increase in all law enforcement jurisdictions of heroin use and some relationship to the OxyContin or the painkiller epidemic that we've been seeing across the state. Just anecdotally, an OxyContin pill could cost $80 and a heroin high can cost $5. And so the economics are what we're seeing in this resurgence. And it's not just a law enforcement problem. Our prevention, treatment, and needle exchange programs are woefully inadequate for the problems that we're having. And so it's a larger conversation, and I appreciate it coming out here because it's something we need to figure out a way to deal with. So thank you.
So that brings us to the point in our agenda where we turn to public comment, public communication. And let me remind you that during public communications, anyone can speak to the council about city business, including items that are on tonight's agenda, with one exception, and that relates to public hearings. We don't accept testimony on those topics where City Council will have either held a public hearing in the last 45 days or we are scheduled to hold a public hearing in the next 45 days. So in order to hear as many people as possible, City Council members will not answer questions or make comments about testimony until the end of the public communication process. We've set aside 30 minutes in our agenda to hear from the public. If there are more people signed up who want to speak than we can fit into that 30-minute period, there will be a chance at the end of our business meeting for additional public communication. So with that, I will turn to the sign-in forms And I'd like to turn first to Heather Moore.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones and City Council members for the opportunity to speak. And first, I want to say an additional thank you to all of you for this recognition that you gave today. That's really amazing. I think it is important to take a moment and think about the people who have taken their lives or consider taking their lives. So thank you so much for recognizing that. I'm going to be really brief because I think what I have to share with you is the words in and of themselves are the most important thing I think that I could say tonight. And I'll say this is fast-breaking news because it literally was just handed to me about an hour ago. So I'm going to read from a statement that is going to be shared to a whole myriad of people, but all across the Olympia area, folks that have been talking about the People's House Project. So you'll receive this statement, and all of the different neighborhood associations will receive the statement. Business owners and other interested parties will receive the full statement. But this is a portion of that to get to the meat. So bear with me, I have to read it from my phone. Because of our deep commitment to safety and to be in line with current shelter services operating in our community, the People's House Shelter, once operational, will serve the population that most shelters in Olympia currently serve in order to fill the gaps created by our loss of the volunteer-run shelters. In addition, after listening to community concerns and much discussion about how to proceed with the People's House effectively and safely, we have determined we will not pursue a shelter location at the 1011 10th Avenue Southeast. We will, however, continue to actively pursue other safe and viable sites suited to shelter operations. As we proceed with the project, we remain committed to active public engagement as we work towards community consensus on how to best provide shelter that will address the wants and needs of all in our community. We wish to thank all of you who have taken the time to offer careful, constructive thoughts on how we might move forward in faith and compassion as we pursue shelter options. Public participation is important to us, and so please come to our next event, our next public engagement opportunity. That'll be on the 16th, so it's not that long from now, and it'll be at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Gar Lippo, followed by...
And that will be at the Knox Center, sorry.
Gar Lippo, followed by Bortai Hargrove.
Hi, I'm Gar Lippo. I'm here to speak today about an 800-pound gorilla in the room, climate change. Now, the City Council has one of the most forward-thinking policies on climate change of any city, of any small city in the United States, and I want to thank both past and current council members for that fact. But there's one thing you could do that you are not doing now. In 2012, new wind farms sold electricity for 4 cents a kilowatt hour, which is cheaper than it can be provided by new gas turbines or new coal plants. Yet, if you look at where the capital investment is going, you'll see a lot more capital investment going to dirty fossil fuels, to pipelines, to fracking, to coal trains. The City Council, the City of Olympia, like all cities, has a lot of investments. And what I'm here to ask you to do today is to divest your funds and your pension funds and your reserves from all fossil fuels. Now, the main reason for asking this is because it would be in line with current policy and with the values of the City of Olympia. But it would also be fiscally prudent and faithful to your fiduciary responsibility. It would be fiscally prudent because climate change increases food prices, which eats away at the sales tax dollars since most food is exempt from taxes. It increases health care costs, which adds to the labor cost of the City of Olympia. It, in the long run, will hurt property values of coastal property, which will eat at our property tax base. In terms of fiduciary duty, I think you'll find that whatever the rate of return, I'm not at all convinced that in the future the rate of return on fossil fuels is going to be as great as it is at present, but whatever the rate of return it is, fossil fuels also cost retirees health care and food, which are costs which are a big part of retiree cost of living. So if you look at net costs, fossil fuel investments have a negative rate of return for the retirees. So for that reason, I would say it's very much in your fiduciary responsibility also to reduce investments in fossil fuel. And I'm sure other people will have other things to say on this, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Bortai Hargrove, followed by Jim Reeves.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Bortai Hargrove. I live at 9822 Dempsey Lane, Southwest. As a member of the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation's Climate Crises Group, I'm here to urge the City Council to join the municipalities nationwide that have begun the process of divesting their retirement funds from fossil fuels. In Washington, the City of Seattle and Thurston County have taken the lead in the divestment movement. It is time for the City of Olympia to join them. Portland, Eugene, Berkeley, San Francisco, Richmond, Madison, Santa Fe, Ithaca, Providence, and Cambridge are among the cities that have already begun to divest from the big oil, coal, and gas companies that are fueling the climate crises. This year, I want to remind you, the cumulative CO2 in the atmosphere reached 400 parts per million for the first time. That's CO2 which may remain in the atmosphere for millennia. Unless we act now, we will not be able to hold climate change to the 2 degrees Celsius, beyond which scientists warn us we face catastrophic consequences. The very least that we can do is to refuse to cooperate with the big coal, oil, and gas companies that are destroying our livable climate. I have copies of the letter the Thurston County Commissioners wrote to Jim McIntyre, the chair of the Washington State Investment Board, directing him to divest the county's contribution to the commingled trust fund from fossil fuels. I also have a copy of the letter Mayor McGinn wrote to the Seattle City Employees Retirement Fund, and I'm just going to deliver these letters to you. These are the Thurston County letters, and this is the letter from the Mayor. I have a copy for each council member. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Reeves, followed by Ted Cortron.
Yes, my name is Jim Reeves, also known as Moses. I live here in Olympia. And again, I want to address the issue of concerns public safety here in the state of Washington and the City of Olympia. And that is the growing potential for a large earthquake and volcanic eruption, Mount Rainier, in the midst of that earthquake. Now, I sat here tonight and I heard people suggest that this is a problem we should address. Drug needles explosion, graffiti on the walls, garbage in the alleys and down by the fountain. We got a problem with global warming and sea rise. But really, the biggest problem and the most immediate problem that we really have that threatens millions of lives in this state is a big earthquake and volcanic eruption. And I think there's a prophecy about that, Rainier erupting in the midst of a big earthquake in the Bible, the book of Revelation. Now, scientists recently said that it was a report in the newspaper that they're going to try to get a better idea when Mount Rainier might erupt by somehow monitoring the chamber, the magma chamber that's underneath a volcano. I don't know, didn't say how they were going to do that, but they think that they give pretty good odds that there'll be a big earthquake and maybe Rainier will erupt sometime in the next, say, 40 or 50 years. But I think in the next 10 or 12 years. So I don't know why we're spending so much time worrying about people committing suicide when we got a big volcano and a big fault line here for potential for a huge earthquake is going to kill almost everyone when it occurs. So I think your priorities are misplaced. You should focus on what threatens most people and how soon, and then try to do something about that to mitigate the loss of life and the destruction of property. And quit wasting resources on stuff that is way down the line as far as a public threat. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ted Nation, followed by Pat Holm.
My name is Ralph T., or Ted Nation. I, too, am a member of the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation Confronting the Climate Crisis Committee. I would also like to endorse everything other presenters have made regarding the seriousness and immediacy of the climate crisis and the moral imperative of keeping average temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. I also join in asking you to direct Olympia's contribution to the Washington State Department of Retirement System's pension plans be immediately divested from any new investment in fossil fuel companies and be fully divested within 5 years from direct ownership from any commingled trust funds that include fossil fuel equities and corporate bonds. Rather than piling on scientific evidence of the risk we are taking by continuing to invest in fossil fuels, however, I would like to emphasize the financial risk of doing so. The paragraph from the Carbon Tracker report I quoted in my email letter to you makes the essential points. The Carbon Tracker initiative is a new way of looking at the carbon emission problem. It is focused on the fossil fuel reserves held by public listed companies and by the way they are valued and assessed by markets. Currently, financial markets have an unlimited capacity to treat fossil fuel reserves as assets. As governments move to control emissions, this market failure is creating systemic risk for institutional investors, notably the threat of fossil fuel assets becoming stranded as the shift to a low-carbon economy accelerates. HSBC Global Research has projected that if the necessary government policies are adopted to limit temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius, it would cut the value of European fossil fuel capitalization by 40 to 60%. The impact on the valuation of North American and other fossil fuel companies would be similar. HSBC is the 6th biggest bank in the world. Their words of caution have since been joined by other banks, the International Energy Agency, the World Bank, and MIT. Thank you for your attention to this important issue. I had intended to submit a physical copy of the Carbon Tracker 2013 report, but had trouble printing it. Instead, I am submitting the first 7 pages, including the executive summary, a copy of a summarizing article by The Guardian, and a GRIST article. You can read the complete Unburnable Carbon 2013 report by following the link at the end of my letter to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Holm, followed by Roseanne Rance.
Yeah, my name is Pat Holm, and I've been a resident of Olympia for about 50 years. And I'm also a member of the climate group that's been talking about divestment. And I really appreciate all the problems that you city council members are dealing with. And it was good to hear about them. But this is something that shouldn't take that much time to write to figure out the letter for divestment, because divestment makes more sense as a prevention to what could happen to Olympia. Anyway, we need to stop investing in fossil fuels. And at this time, we don't have a regional plan to address the many problems that could arise from climate change. And climate change could have many impacts on our infrastructure, water supplies, emergency management, food systems, and our economy. And one of those things threatening immediately downtown is sea level rise. And that's already happening to some extent. And I did bring Andy Hobbs pictures that he showed us last February of the flooding that took place. And I'll just leave this as kind of a reminder of the flooding that's already taking place because of when a king tide gets together with lots of rainwater, and then our stormwater system is gravity fed. Anyway, the high tide backs up in the city of Olympia, causing some flooding. Anyway, I think we could. I've also got the engineer response to sea level rise, which was done in 2011 for the city of Olympia. And there it mentions that it might cost as much as $70 million at that time to build seawalls to save our downtown from flooding. And it seems to me that we need to possibly do both of those things, but my time is up. Anyway, I just wanted to add my voice to divestment. Let's stop investing in fossil fuels and invest in wind that Gar mentioned, which is wind and solar. Thank you.
Thank you. Roseanne Rance, followed by Eddie Rouser.
Hello, council members. I'm Roseanne Rance, and I am here too to suggest divestment of the stocks that are invested in these companies who use their influence and wealth to do actions that are harmful to all of us. I listen to all the things that you have to do, and you have a lot on your plates. But this is something where we have to step across the city lines and think about how this is such a monumental problem that we have to cooperate. I'm hoping that Mayor Buxbaum comes back with some awareness and among the other regions and countries that he's meeting with, and they are discussing this problem and deciding how to approach it. Recently, I went to the Love Our Local Fest in Northeast Olympia, and I wore a button that day that said, "We are all local." And it's true. They say the world is getting smaller. And when you look at what's happening with the weather changes and the tidal changes, the world is getting smaller, and we have to learn to cooperate to mitigate these things. And one of the first things we could do would be to divest our money in these companies that are causing a big part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Eddie Rouser, followed by Lydia Grosseler.
Hello. I received a flyer today that said our east side neighborhood's at risk and we need your help, and I think it's your help we need, but it's regarding the low barrier to entry shelter located at 1011 10th Avenue next to multiple schools. And I know the first speaker probably changed this a little bit, but I still think from the standpoint of me, married with 3 children, I still think I have a view that I would say that I feel it's not a great idea to put in our city of Olympia, and I don't think it brings positive things to it. So the proposed barrier entry shelter, I think, harms the community. It will not help the vulnerable or homeless. It creates an environment to harm those who use it. It creates great risk to those that manage it. It elevates the risk to the adjacent neighborhoods. It creates dangerous situations for kids who play and go to school in those areas. And it sends the wrong message to a population of people that are drug addicts, alcoholics, criminals, sex offenders, people that don't want to be ID'd, and people that don't like the current services that are available to them. I do not see any positive outcomes coming from this type of project. I will definitely vote for officials that can come up with better solutions to problems for these things and not support a low barrier to entry shelter. So please don't send the message to Olympia neighborhoods, schools, Thurston County, neighboring states that Olympia wants these type of problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Lydia, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Lydia, followed by Jennifer Collier.
Could we turn the volume up on the microphone? I am having a hard time hearing all the speakers.
Thanks for letting us know.
Thank you for letting me speak. My last name is Gross Close, but nobody ever says it right, so it's okay. I just want to thank you for what the first speaker said. I live in the East Side neighborhood, and I appreciate that you're choosing a different location. I just have to say I don't think that a low-barrier homeless shelter belongs in any neighborhood that's close to schools, to children, to senior citizens, to families. And I hope that you don't choose a neighborhood to put it in. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Collier, followed by Jenna Shoptus.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Collier, and I work in social services in downtown Olympia. And I love that I live in a community where my daughter can learn about social issues and grow and become part of the positive change. May 2011, Derek McDougall, Dude Man, spoke before City Council. He said that if people who are homeless in Olympia continue to be run out by officials or brutalized by police, then like a rubber band, they would snap. And so this is what happened, and now Dude Man is dead, gone forever. This could have been prevented. When I first met Dude Man, he was in front of the grocery outlet. He came inside when he saw me held up at the register scrambling because I forgot my wallet. He offered to buy some food for my daughter and I. I didn't accept, but I never forgot this. It was the kind of person he was. I lost sight of him for a while. When I saw him again, I encouraged him to come into town for supports to meet with his basic needs. He told me he'd been banned from Olympia. I ran into him about a week before he died. He looked worn down and depressed. I bought him lunch with my daughter, and we talked for a little while. He told me he didn't know what to do anymore. He had nowhere to go. He was cut off from support in Olympia, and he didn't have a community anymore. He said this was the reason he was down. He told me to call him Derek, not Dude Man. He asked if I would call and gave me his number. I didn't call, but then I learned that he had hung himself. I heard his number ring in my ears, and I wished I had. So I'm calling out to all of you now. And the time I've been working in social services in Olympia, I've seen people with problems pushed to the side. The focus often at the top seems to be how can we hide this problem or just get rid of it rather than solve it. Dude Man was a person who had some problems that he needed help solving, but our City of Olympia at times and our police force at times in Olympia cut him off. They ostracized him from all his support. Now it's too late for him. We need to make sure that there are no more people ostracized from their supports and communities. This cannot happen ever again. We cannot give up on finding solutions. In the time I've worked downtown, I've had 5 people close to me in the homeless community die in preventable deaths. A year ago, I drove to Grand Rapids to speak at the funeral of a man who had nobody, who also died homeless on the streets of Olympia, cut off from ample support. Cut off. Does anybody remember him? Did anyone here know Dude Man? Who remembers people without a name? 2 days from now is the anniversary of my brother's death. He also died homeless on the street, cut off from support. Almost 20 years before that, my dad died on the street without support for AIDS. This is personal. It has touched every aspect of my life, work, personal, all. I have long been interested in getting a remembrance tree similar to what they have in a park up in Seattle. Every time somebody in the community who is homeless dies, their name goes on a leaf in the tree in the park. They're not faceless, they're not nameless. They're given a resting place, a memorial. I recently met with a woman who has Dude Man's bike. She told me how he wanted to make a patent for his bike trailer so other people could have dignity and choice. She told me she didn't know what to do with the bike. I don't know yet exactly how I'm going to do this, but I want to see his bike bronzed as a statue or created into a public memorial inscribed with his name and the name of every person in our community who dies without a home. I think this would be especially profound in Sylvester Park, but the artesian well is also a great idea. We are not animals, we are humans. We all deserve dignity. The homeless are part of our community, and we need a place to remember those who have died. Will you join me in making this happen? Please.
Thank you. Jenna Shapatus, followed by John Hillgrove.
Good evening. My name is Jenna Shabutis, and I've lived in Olympia 13 years. And I'm a single working mother. I have a 12-year-old that attends Reeves Middle School. And the reason I'm here is because I need to express my mistrust in having Wi-Fi in Olympia public schools. I think it's a public risk to the health and safety of children. Electromagnetic fields specifically affect the human brain. Children are growing. Their brain barriers are thin. Their brains are softer, and the World Health Organization has referred to Wi-Fi as a Class 2B carcinogen. So we can look at Wi-Fi like smoke. And now that the district has implemented Wi-Fi K through 12, incorporating Common Core cyber learning, these children are being habituated to using computers and iPads and iTouches, and they're harmful. My son started having seizures last year. And it kind of put me in crisis because I'm a single working mother. And I think about all the other families that might not even know why their child is not doing well. I need to keep it together. My partner buried his 13-year-old daughter of a rare case of lymphoma 8 years ago. So there's a point of reference that I'm not going to let go of if there are 15,000 studies proving that electromagnetic fields are harmful to the human genome. So why is a federal learning program doling out iTouches and iPads and Common Core curriculum bringing cyber learning into our schools and a future generation of 9,000 children that might not grow up right because it's been proven? There are studies. There was a study in our downtown library 2 years ago. Sam Milham, PhD, MD, our state's epidemiologist, conducted a study at his book signing, Dirty Electricity. Everyone should read it. At that study, he took metered readings of the high-frequency transients that were in the library with the computers all around. He said, I'd like to do a study here. He got funding from some East Coast university, and with this study, he implemented filters that would short out the high-frequency transits. So it's a solvable problem if people were aware of it. And in the course of 6 months, he took urine samples of 7 of 35 different volunteers, and what proved to show dopamine levels flatten out with extended exposures of EMF. If that happened to adults, what is happening to our children in school? I want to bring this up to the City Council. I've brought this up to the school board many times, and they're kind of listening, but reworking an entire school curriculum would mean a readjustment to our priorities of keeping our children safe. Thank you.
Thank you. John Hillgrove, followed by Seth Huth.
Hello, City Council members. My name's John Hillgrove, and I once was homeless also on the streets of Olympia. I kind of slept on the hyper-firm mattress of the concrete out by the YMCA in the little cubbyhole with drug and alcohol-free people that watched over each other. And it's often a misconception with the homeless community that they do suffer drug and alcohol issues, a common conception, which some of the police and EMS are probably aware of CIT certification that can distinguish those under the influence of drugs and alcohol and those suffering from mental health issues. I'm hoping more police officers in the Olympia Police Department urge for crisis intervention training and also EMS so lives could be saved and obvious lawsuits could be avoided by the City of Olympia in making bad decisions in the field with respect to EMS and law enforcement. Also, as a person that was homeless and indigent, I'd like to thank Capital Recovery Center and the PATH program for lending me a third-party voucher to be able to secure housing of my own. This program is essential into providing and empowering lives of disabled Americans such as myself and other indigent populations that suffer from the severe economic times and the employment situations a lot of homeless people have been subjected to. There's various reasons why people are homeless. Some are homeless due to predatory lending practices of financial institutions. Others have been decimated by traumatic events in their lives. And yes, some do self-medicate in certain situations. What I ran into as being indigent and homeless was insomnia. I didn't choose to go to sleep with drugs or alcohol. I didn't choose to self-medicate, but many on the streets do. This is commonly referred to in clinical practice in the recovery model as co-occurring illnesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth Hutt, followed by Mary Russell.
Hello. Thanks for letting me speak. Sent out little pictures when I printed out for you guys to take a look at. So, okay. Again, hello, my name is Seth Hutt. I live in the Bigelow neighborhood with my wife Jenny and my 2 children. We moved to Olympia from Seattle last year because we wanted a safe and healthy environment for our children. Our home on Quince Avenue was a dream come true for our family. I came tonight to talk about the homeless people in the downtown core of Olympia. Today, as I was biking with my children to Roosevelt Elementary on the east side, I noticed a City of Olympia employee checking out a ravine at top of the Bigelow Springs Park. I asked him what was going on. Long story short, he was checking out the remains of a homeless camp recently cleared by the City of Olympia. The camp was located on a neighborhood path, East Bay condos to the west, Bigelow Springs to the south, residential homes in all other directions. The camp was literally right in the middle of our neighborhood. I saw at least 5 tents, endless tarps, mounds of garbage, clothes, blankets. I saw needles, pills, knives. Clearly, the people had been living in this camp for months. I was stunned by what I saw. The city had very little knowledge to share with me. They stated that because the camp was on private property, East Bay condos, the city was not responsible for the cleanup of any of this dangerous and toxic site. Amazingly, the city also told me they had no record of any crime being committed on the property. Question: isn't illegal dumping, camping, defecating, and the dumping of illegal drug paraphernalia and weapons a crime in this city? Where were these people told just to move along? What I've learned today is that the owner of the East Bay Condo Association, the owners of the East Bay Condo Association, will be directly footing the bill for the camp cleanup. Truly an unfortunate thing for them. What happened to all the camp dwellers? Who were they? Where'd they go? Maybe they're in your backyards now. I hope the City Council can collaborate and find a way to help the city and residents find a way to safely manage the homeless population. It's all around us, every day, on every downtown block, alley, parks, and now securely nestled into our residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Russell, followed by Jessica Archer.
Hi, my name is Mary Russell, and I'm a parent of two and a therapist, and I live in the East Side neighborhood in Olympia. Okay. I'm not here to talk specifically about the People's House. My intent is to respond to the conversation that has been going on about the shelter and its correlation to children's safety in the East Side neighborhood. The way this conversation has been going implies that homeless people are more dangerous to children than other people. This is problematic for two reasons. The first is that an entire group of people are being called abusers and pedophiles, which may be true for some of that demographic, but many people in that demographic are good, kind people who would never hurt anyone. And furthermore, many people in that demographic are survivors of abuse or currently fleeing from abuse. The second reason this is problematic is because it takes attention away from where it needs to be. 70% of children who are victims of abuse are abused by people that they know. This means that abuse is happening in our homes, schools, and churches. The most important first step in prevention of child sexual abuse is to speak really honestly about where and how abuse happens. I am here today as a parent and as a therapist for children survivors of sexual abuse to say I agree that we need to protect the children, but scapegoating the homeless community is in direct opposition to the challenging and important work of preventing childhood sexual abuse. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that we are beyond our 30-minute period. There are about 6 more people who have signed up. So, council members, would you like to continue at this time? Good. All right. Then I'll call on Jessica Archer, followed by Lady Liberty.
Hi, I'm Jessica Archer, and I live in Olympia. I want to talk about the low barrier homeless shelter proposal, the People's House. The East Side neighborhood is a neighborhood that's been working hard to come back from being considered kind of the wrong side of the tracks. We have great neighbors, neighborhood picnics, community garden, and good parks. We're also really compassionate, and we already have about 80% of the shelter beds in the city in or adjacent to our neighborhood. At the same time, we're also a struggling neighborhood. 50% of the kids, almost 50% of the kids at Madison Elementary are low income, and the elementary school also hosts a welcome room for the homeless kids where they can get food and clothes and stuff like that. So a lot of our neighborhood is already kind of living on the edge, and I'm concerned while the 10th Avenue site for the proposed location is off the table, I'm concerned about the other locations. A lot of the other locations that were selected by the city staff in the matrix are still really close. Some of them are actually closer to Madison Elementary on 7th and 8th or something like that. They're actually closer. So I am concerned that schools and the neighborhood were never considered in the criteria for selecting the shelter. The People's House shelter is really a special proposal, and I want people to realize this, that this isn't an anti-shelter campaign that our Concerned Eastside Neighbors group is putting on. The models that this shelter comes after are models that really only take place in downtown cores like downtown DC, downtown Baltimore, downtown Vancouver, BC, not in residential neighborhoods in Olympia. And I'm worried with the effort, which I fully support, to clean up downtown. I don't want the strategy to be to push everyone into the neighborhoods. That shouldn't be our proposal for cleaning up downtown. And that part's really concerning to me. And I do appreciate the efforts to clean up downtown, but we can't do it at the risk of our neighborhoods and of our schools. And that's why we want to ask that we really think about, with these special shelters, if Olympia is indeed ready to have a shelter that will house sex offenders and hand out needles for folks that's for me, isn't it? Sorry. I just want to ask that we do a moratorium on shelters right now and think about changing the municipal code to really think about where these places should be located, if it should be close to schools with that population.
Thank you. Lady Liberty, followed by Wendy Katz.
Good evening, Council. It's wonderful to be here. I always enjoy being in a body for a change. You have several proposals, several resolutions tonight, and I bring another. According to all polls, emails, and phone calls to the White House and Congress, it is crystal clear that the vast majority of Americans oppose the idea of bombing Syria. I remember back in 2007 when Congress was deciding to bail out the big Wall Street banks. At that time, on national television, Barbara Boxer, senator in California, stated that all congressmen were receiving emails and calls 100-1 against the bailout. Yet, your president and your Congress did bail out those big evil banks. And according to Elizabeth Warren, they're even bigger today, 30% bigger. Where's your representative government? Where did it go? Who is really in charge in America? You, the people? I think not. Your founding fathers and mothers must be turning over in their graves. Americans, wake up. Now, again, it appears to be happening. Your federal representatives may well ignore their true constituents again to favor the dark hats, the 1%, those bankers and their military-industrial corporations. Hell, even the Pope, for God's sake, knows what's going on. Sorry, I get a little emotional when I'm in the body. Here's the deal. Remember 9/11? The whole world showed support and sympathy for the United States. They said, "We are Americans." Remember that? They were with their flags, "We are Americans." Well, I suggest we do the same. We are Syrians. Tonight, you, the compassionate Olympia City Council, can change the world. You can lead all of America to put the President and Congress back in their rightful place as your servants. Here's the little resolution. We, the City Council of Olympia, wish to inform President Obama and every member of Congress that the City of Olympia, Washington, considers itself to be a sister city of Damascus, Syria. Therefore, let it be known that any bombing by the U.S. military of Damascus, Syria, would be considered a bombing of Olympia, Washington. We, the City Council of Olympia, Washington, therefore demand that our representatives, the President and Congress of the United States, do not bomb Damascus. Tonight, put your red line in front of our president and Congress and say, you shall not pass, you shall not bomb Syria. You can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. T.J. Johnson, followed by Sarah Pete.
Good evening, and thank you for extending your public communication period. I'm sitting here tonight reminded of the complexity and diversity of the issues that you all deal with, much as I did when I was on the City Council, and I appreciate your time. I'm going to bring up a couple things that you haven't heard about yet tonight. The first is in reaction to what I read over the weekend about the potential for changing the master plan at the Briggs Urban Village. I was on the council when a lot of that work was done, and I really do echo the comments that Mayor Fouch made in the paper earlier this week about the importance of sticking to that plan. There was a tremendous amount of work that went into developing that master plan for the Briggs Village. Tremendous community outreach, and especially with the neighborhoods that were most affected by that. And in the end, the City Council on which I served made a decision that was in the best interest of the community. Not in the best interest of the speculative real estate investors who wanted to turn money off of that project, but in the best interest of the community. And I think you need to hold that really clear as this issue makes its way forward, that that was a decision that was well-reasoned, that was based on the best interest of the community. Yes, they can't fill their retail space now, but let's look to the future. I've been participating in Sustainable Thurston for the last almost 3 years. We know that there's going to be 140 to 170,000 more people in Thurston County by the year 2035. We also know that there's a serious effort to direct more of that growth into urban areas. If we start to give up a little bit here and a little bit there, it's going to make it really hard to implement that vision of a sustainable community that's coming out of the Sustainable Thurston process. It's going to be very hard to save farmland and forests and the things that are special about this community. So I would just urge you to hold fast to the vision of what an urban village is supposed to be and recognize that the stakes are pretty high, and it's not your job to protect real estate investors. It's your job to look to the long-term health and quality of life in our community. Second issue that brought me out tonight is the issue on your agenda later about delaying implementation of the comp plan or adoption of the comp plan. I understand the tremendous challenges and competing demands that the city has. I also am really troubled by this notion. This process began in 2009. If it's delayed until 2014, that will have been 5 years to go through a planning process. Now, I know the people that I talk to are frustrated by the length of process in the City of Olympia. And to the point of saying, well, why bother participating? Because nothing ever happens. It's just endless process. And I happen to think that the comp plan draft that's before you is a very good draft that's had a lot of really good community input into it. And I think what people are ready for is to see something happen with it, to see implementation, to see the planning for neighborhood sub-areas begin, to see new urban agriculture codes, to see all the great ideas that are in that plan put into action. And we all know that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work for implementation, and I'm very encouraged that this council has talked consistently about the importance of implementing the comp plan. So I don't want to see this thing get bogged down any further. I don't think that going back to the public about is the vision right is where we ought to go now. I think we need to go back to the public and say it's time to roll up our sleeves and implement this plan and get them to help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Pate, followed by Steve Lyons.
Hello, my name is Sarah Pate. I am a senior librarian in adult services at the Olympia Timberland Library, and I'm also the adult programs coordinator for our branch. And so I'm here tonight to tell you about some of the exciting programs we have coming up for adults. And like all library programs, they're free to the public. This is just a very quick sample of what's coming up in the next few weeks, and I also want to let you know how to find out about our upcoming programs so you won't have to miss any in the future. tomorrow, September 11th at 7:30, thanks to librarian Kelsey Smith, who coordinated the event, we've got award-winning writer Rhiannon Argo and some of her fellow Sister Spit tourmate alumni. She's going to be reading from and signing copies of her second novel, Girls I've Run Away With, and that's a program that's sponsored by the Friends of the Olympia Library. We've also got several upcoming programs for nature lovers. On September 19th at 7:30, Barbara Moritz is going to be in town to talk about her book, The Soul of Yosemite, Finding, Defending, and Saving the Valley's Sacred Wild Nature. Ms. Moritz worked for the National Park Service as an ecologist and interpretive naturalist in Yosemite, as well as 4 other national parks in the western United States between 1982 and 2006. And so we're really lucky to have her coming to the library. And that's actually a program that was suggested to me by a library regular. So I wanted to remind everyone that we're always open to suggestions in terms of programs and materials. The public library belongs to the public. So if we don't have something that you need or want, we are always happy to order it or borrow it from another library system if we can. On September 21st, we have Autumn Roots, Wild Plant Remedies for Optimal Health. Elise Krohn is an herbalist and wild foods educator who's passionate about cultivating healing relationships between plants and people. And she's going to talk to us about the powerful medicines and delicious foods that we can find growing all around us, sometimes as weeds. For history lovers, Peter Reed will be back by popular demand on September 25th at 7:30 to show recently restored films of 1926 logging operations in our area. And he's also going to talk about his recently released book, Schaefer State Park. Also coming back to the library on September 26th at 7:30 is Uyen Nicole Duong, and she will be speaking about her award-winning novels, Mimi and Her Mirror and Postcards from Nam. Copies of her books are going to be available in both English and Vietnamese. She's a Fulbright scholar, an attorney, and a really great speaker, so you don't want to miss her. But this is just a small sample of the things coming up, and so come to the library to pick up an adult programs booklet. You can like the Olympia Timberland Library on Facebook and choose to get notifications to get updates about upcoming programs for all ages. And you can also sign up to get quick email alerts for all adult and youth programs by calling in or stopping by the information desk to find out how via our online events calendar. And the last thing I'll tell you is that September is library card sign-up month. So come down and get a new card if you need one. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Lyons, followed by Emmeline Mead.
Okay, what you should be looking at here is a geodata map of an area off of the 1200 block of Henry Street and the 1400 block of 13th Avenue Southeast. I want you to take special note of this dead end. What I've done is I've circled 1402 13th Avenue Southeast. And if you'll notice the dead end that runs behind it, that is actually only how far Henry Street goes. It doesn't continue all the way through this wetland area. But what I've found out is that these maps are layered, and that by stripping away layers on these maps, you can reconfigure them just about any way that you want. 1402 13th Avenue, the last notification I had on it was that no building permit was going to be issued for that property until the stream issue was resolved, and to see Todd Stamm about it. In 2012, when that construction was going on, my curiosity got the best of me. I had to look at the file to see what was going on and how they got away in conjunction and cooperation with the Planning and Development Department with building on that lot. That brings us to page 2. On page 2, you've got 1402 is the red rectangle there, and you don't have to look very hard to notice an entire wetland has completely vanished by stripping away layers on these geodata maps here. Last month I visited the planning department for my own personal means, and I thought originally that stripping away of that wetland had been done just so they could get a permit. They've already allowed, in cooperation with the Planning and Development Department, to build 3 homes here already, almost to completion off a second set of plans. I wasn't surprised to see a wetland disappear. But after discussing my own personal matter with the Planning and Development Department, 2 of them. One of them said that they felt that there was something in the past that this area had, there was concerns about this area. So what he did was punched up on the computer this particular area, and he got the same results as what was put in the files for 1402. Which means that entire wetland has been removed from the city database. And I think it's important to start out by answering a couple of questions here. Number 1, just exactly when and where did that entire wetland disappear to? And the next question is, who is responsible for removing that critical area from the city's database? And when I get those answers, when I get answers to those questions, I'm sure we can proceed further. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Emmeline Mead.
Hi. I'm also here to speak about Derek Dudeman McDougall. Specifically, I'd like to speak about how he was banished from Olympia about a year before he died. I've been talking to a lot of people about this, and a lot of people are feeling that there's there's people talking over there, that there's a correlation between these events, that being pushed out of town and cut off from his street family, cut off from his friends, cut off from resources in Olympia, took a heavy toll on him and might have influenced his death. Another theme among the people that I've talked to about this issue is that no one really seems to know how this banishing works. It seems to be a mysterious process. I think the city, the police, whoever is qualified to speak on this topic owes us some answers. Shed a little light on it. You know, on what grounds can someone be banished from Olympia? Who makes that decision? What laws or ordinances apply? What oversight exists? What recourse would a person have to reverse or appeal the decision and be able to come back to town? I mean, it just seems kind of like a Wild West, run people out of town on a rail sort of thing. I don't really know much about it, so I'd like someone to speak about it. If you can't guess, I think it's, you know, pretty outrageous, and I want it to stop, but I'll probably be back to speak about that another time. I'd also like to support Jennifer's proposal for the public art memorial to honor the lives and acknowledge the deaths of the people without homes who die in Olympia. You know, like it or not, these people are part of our community. Some of you may be aware of the census data showing that around 80% of the homeless people are from Thurston County, and roughly half of those are from Olympia. So these are our people. They're part of our community, regardless of where they sleep. That should be publicly affirmed, and maybe such an affirmation would help counter some of the prejudice that pushes them to their deaths in the first place. Derek was well known and well liked in Olympia, and in Lacey, actually, after he was pushed there, and he'll be missed by a lot of people, and I think that his iconic bike trailer would be the perfect forum for such a memorial to take. So I'd like to see some support for that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Paul Drumheller, and I've lived in Olympia for a while. I'm just going to let you know, your lights overhead are bright for me, which is why in here I would normally wear 1 pair of sunglasses. Outdoors, I wear 3 to 5 pairs of sunglasses on days. What I'm talking about are bicycles and sidewalks and pedestrians in downtown core of Olympia. I've asked several police officers who've told me there are no rules and regulations for bicycles in the downtown core, other than that if I get hit by one, I can sue them. I've been told that there's no speed limit in the downtown core for bicycles. I've been told that there's no direction of traffic, and it gets to be irritating after a while when you're walking along. I have bicyclists come up on this side and this side passing me. I have bicyclists coming this way. I move this way. I have one over here. This is a little bit ludicrous in my mind. I have friends in other states who ride bicycles who say that bicycles and sidewalks do not go together, especially in a business area. If all the sidewalks in downtown Olympia were 10 to 20 feet wide, it'd be one story, one thing. But we have places where sidewalks are 3 to 5 feet wide. And the other issue comes up with sidewalks are that sandwich boards are placed everywhere, so therefore you're in the process of dodging bicyclists, trying to avoid the sandwich boards. And then the last thing is the dogs that get tied up outside of businesses, cafes and such, and you trip over their leashes while you're trying to avoid the bicycles. In 2005, I learned how to use a white cane. I'll tell you something. A white cane, at least in a crosswalk, the blind have absolute right of way on both sides of the street. They're like a school bus with the red lights on. On sidewalks, I'm told, watch where you're walking by bicyclists. And I find that to be offensive after a while, and I get tired of constantly wondering if I'm going to get hit because I don't have eyes in the back of my head. So if there are regulations for bicyclists, it'd be nice if they'd be enforced. If there are not regulations of any kind in the downtown core, at least it'd be nice if there would be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I have a proposed resolution here for the City of Olympia. I'd like to read briefly.
Would you state your name?
Alex Day.
Thank you.
Olympia City Council resolution designating December 21st as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Whereas the winter poses extreme hardship and danger for unsheltered and inadequately housed low-income men, women, and children in Olympia, and whereas the spirit of the holiday season of giving provides an opportunity for affirmation and renewal of mind concerning the commitment of this community to love and care for the homeless in Olympia. And whereas December 21st has been designated National Homeless Persons Memorial Day by the National Coalition for the Homeless and the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council, and is so recognized by cities nationwide. And whereas in this season of open-handedness and kindness, citizens of Olympia are encouraged to commit themselves to fostering compassion and concern for all brothers and sisters, especially those who are hungry, poor, and homeless. And whereas in honoring the lives of those who have died on the streets, the urgency of ending and preventing the issue of homelessness is kept a community vanguard, as is the city's collective commitment to preventing such deaths in the future. Now, therefore, resolved by the Council of the City of Olympia, Washington, that we hereby declare December 21st as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. In recognition of the people who have died without shelter in and around Olympia, and we hereby ask all citizens to take a moment of silence in remembrance and encourage our citizens to support all local efforts to reach a positive and humane solution to homelessness in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn now to council member comments. Yes.
Thank you. To Heather and the People's House, thank you so much for listening to the neighborhood's needs and really addressing those by talking about the location and moving the location, and also about looking at the model type. I really appreciate that. I also really appreciate that you are going to continue to try and help our community and meet some needs by focusing on those existing beds we've lost and trying to replace those this winter. So thank you very much. And really, to the People's House and to the East Side and downtown neighborhoods, thanks to you, we're beginning to have that conversation that we're really going to need to have in order to find a successful solution to our challenges. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing all of you on the 16th at Knox at 7 o'clock. So thank you to all the neighborhoods and the People's House.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. I have a question actually to our city manager about the issue that the climate crisis group brought up about divestment. How would that work, and would that be something that we could do?
I think so. Ms. Hargrove provided a copy of a letter from the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. And just to be clear, the City of Olympia does not control our retirement investments. It's controlled by the state of Washington. So what I believe Thurston County did in their letter is urge the state investment board to divest in fossil fuels. So if the council's interested, we could, I believe, do a letter similar to this, urging them to consider divestment.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting idea. And I'd like to maybe pursue that at a later point. As a Jenna Saporis, I'm not sure if I got the name right. She was concerned about electromagnetic rays being harmful, and I would strongly encourage her to talk to our local Department of Health, the county, who are also happen to be the county commissioners, as well as continuing to talk to the school district about those issues. It's really not something, from my understanding, that the city council really has any jurisdiction over. But I do think that it's an issue that it's, I think, really important. TJ Johnson, I really appreciate your bringing us up to date on the history of Briggs Village. I was actually involved peripherally on that, back in the day when that happened, and my memory coincides exactly with yours, that this was something that was very carefully worked out through considerable community input and working actually with the people who wanted to develop Briggs. So it's really something that I'm glad you sort of reminded the council of some of the decisions that were made then and why they were made. So I think we should take that into consideration as we consider that proposal. Our librarian, there she is, yes, Sarah. The library is really one of those gems of the community, and people say the library is old-fashioned and everybody's going on the internet. Well, I think what Sarah brought home to us is how much the library is a vital part of this community, and how they offer all kinds of things that are tremendously useful to the community as a whole, and are really a valuable public resource. And frankly, I myself love actually holding a book as opposed to an iPad. And my understanding is that even so, the library also does electronic books and is lending electronic books to people. So that's a possibility. And then to Emmeline Mead, I would be curious. I'm actually curious too about how the banishment issue works. So I'd like to know more about that. So
I have never heard of a person being banished from their friends or families. I'm perplexed. So if I know of anybody who has an idea, then
I can know.
Oh, maybe Tom knows how people get banished.
There is a process, depending upon the type of behavior and the type of violations that go with, an arrest, and it's a court process. So it would have to be an order from the municipal court judge that somebody would have to refrain from a certain area, and it could be defined an area in downtown potentially. So there is a process that would have to be reviewed by the judge and a request, and so there is a banishment process from certain areas, but it is a court process, and it is overviewed by the municipal court judge.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification, and I'd actually like to find out more about that, and maybe you can also ask, Emmeline can ask some more about that to city staff, as how that process works. I'd actually like to know a little bit more about that. And then Paul Drumheller, as a bicyclist myself, I'm really concerned about the issue of bicycles being on sidewalks. That really is a problem. I think they belong on, that's why we have bike paths. And I would actually like to ask our city attorney to address that a little bit too. I believe there are some rules, but I'm not sure what they are. So if you could clarify that, that might be helpful.
Yes, we've adopted the state model traffic ordinance, and there are provisions in that would prohibit riding a bicycle on the sidewalk in a business district, which I would assume would be in our downtown. So there, if you're outside of a business district and you're riding on a sidewalk, you can, but then you have to yield the right of way. But if there's in a business district, there's not supposed to be people riding on the sidewalk for that very reason. It's just such a populated area and there's a lot of traffic.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, and maybe that's something we can, and again, I'm concerned about people who are disabled and who have sight difficulties, that this is can be a pretty serious matter for them because they really can't protect themselves in the way that folks without disabilities can. So maybe that's something we can look into too. Thanks for clarifying.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Thanks to everyone for coming tonight. This was quite a diverse crowd and a lot of issues to tackle. I want to thank all of the folks who came, the climate crew. Thank you for speaking up. I also wanted to acknowledge Jenna, is it Shabadi's, in terms with the Olympia School District. Is she still here? She may have left, but I know that Council Member Langer suggested going to county commissioners. I would suggest going to the state level as well. I mean, if they're being handed out statewide, it may be something more of a health legislative issue to tackle, and really do see what the implications are for kids who are growing up with these electronics around them. We actually don't know what the long-term effects could be. So I appreciated her bringing that forward, and I would encourage her to go to the state as well. I also have a question a comment on John Hillgrove, who talked about if our police are aware or have training in terms of drug and alcohol abuse versus mental health issues. And I don't know if Steve Paul, if you could comment on that.
I can, and actually Lieutenant Lauer may be able to add more, but I believe that I know that the crisis intervention training is a long-standing part of our training package for Olympia, and I would expect that most, if not all, of our police officers actually have CIT training. And I don't know if Paul wants to add anything to that or not. Is that accurate? Sure. Come on, microphone.
All right, I'll get this right here.
So approximately 12 years ago, the City of Olympia Police Department started down through the CIT process. We were one of the first agencies here in the state of Washington to start with a training program, 40-hour training program, which most of the agencies throughout the state of Washington have began to model after. We have had one of the first, like I said, first models. We fell on the shoulders of Seattle PD that started doing this. And so this program has been around and a hallmark of our police department for quite some time. We have, and I'd have to double check the numbers, but probably 2/3, if not 3/4 of our officers have been through the 40-hour training course. And currently, the models and the training for the CIT, I keep using CIT, the Crisis Intervention Training, which is what I'm referring to, is taking place at the basic law enforcement academy at this point. Many of the sessions, I guess, or training seminars are modeled and now put into the actual academy based on some of the stuff that OPD itself had a big hand in at the beginning. So we're out there doing it.
Thank you. I have some additional comments. I wanted to address Seth Hutt from the Bigelow neighborhood, who had concerns with is he still here? I'm just wondering, he was the gentleman that was concerned with the East Bay condos and all the garbage and things left behind. Mr. City Manager, is it the case then that if it is on private property like that, that he is responsible for the cost of all the cleanup when the shelter
Yes,
is?
that's the case.
Okay.
If it's on public property, we will clean it up, but we expect private property owners to manage the property, so.
Okay. So he would have had to call in and say.
I didn't think it was his property. It sounds like it belonged to East Bay Condos, not him, but.
That's what I meant, East Bay Condos. Yeah, okay. And then I just wanted to add to Paul Drumheller's comments on bikes. I would like to include skateboards. I would go downtown, and having skateboards whizzing by at a high speed, I think, is just as dangerous as having bikes. And I don't know what our ordinance is on that, but I'm sure, assuming we aren't allowed to have skateboarders.
We'll check. We'll let you know.
Okay. And I think that is all. I think Jessica Archer's gone. I appreciate her comments about the low barrier shelter, the ongoing conversations that everyone is having, and I think it was Councilmember Hankins who was saying that it actually is opening the door to much more productive conversation amongst the community. As painful as it is, we all care about the community, we all care about the homeless, and we all care about our city. We want our downtown to be successful. And I am just wondering about slowing down the whole low barrier concept and having some further discussion on what would go into it, just the whole concept of it and the parameters. And I think she suggested a moratorium on shelters for now, but and looking at zoning issues, but I just think that we need a much more thorough conversation on what a low barrier shelter means to Olympia and in Olympia. So I just think that due to the public outcry and concern that potentially the citizens of Olympia want to have a further conversation about this. So did you find out about skateboards?
We did. Skateboards are also prohibited on downtown sidewalks.
I thought so. Okay, so, and thank you again to everyone who came forward tonight. It was really a very informative and interesting evening.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. I'd like to echo the comments about a really diverse and actually kind of exciting public comment period. If we could spend more time hearing these kinds of issues as broadly, I would enjoy it. So a couple of quick things. Thank you to Heather Moore from Capital Recovery for delivering late-breaking news here. I appreciate the People's House Project's commitment to open and robust dialogue going forward, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes of that conversation. I turn to the council and say, can we just direct staff to bring us a letter around divesting from climate change and check that off our list with consensus?
I'm not sure if we all know enough about that to just sign off. I'd feel more comfortable if we had a little bit more of a briefing than just,
So I'll leave that to our agenda setting team to see if it can fit in the conversation.
We'd be willing to come and do a real presentation for you if you have the time.
And then the last item is thank you to Paul. I'm sorry I didn't get your last name written down correctly, but I'm wondering if the conversation this is the third time in a week and a half I've had people talk to me about bicyclists in the downtown core, and wanted to, there are a couple of models I've seen around the country, particularly in communities our size with really great downtowns that actually are a dismount zone in the core, the busiest section of downtown. It's not easy to ride on the streets of the downtown core, let alone on the sidewalks. And so I'd be interested if you guys would be willing to refer to BPAC, to Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, to take a look at whether that's an appropriate model for Olympia.
Yes. Councilmember Langer.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I think that the dismount zone is actually a really bad idea. I think that that bicycles belong on the street like any other vehicle does. And as long as we follow the rules of the road, as well as cars, we have just as much a right to be on the regular road as anyone else. I don't think, bicycles clearly don't belong on the sidewalk, especially when people are, like a 2-year-old is going on the sidewalk. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but when adults travel on the sidewalk, I do see that as a problem. So, bicycles need to follow the rules of the road. They need to do like everybody else does when you're on a public roadway. And I ride my bicycle on a regular basis through downtown. And I think we should encourage people doing more bicycling, not less, but doing it responsibly.
If I may, Mayor Pro Tem Jones?
Sure.
And so that's a great point, and one I didn't think of because I'm not obviously an avid cyclist.
And I will start.
I could. But one thought would be then maybe to open that up to ask the BPAC to look at whether there's some educational opportunities. We found out that it is illegal to ride on the sidewalks, and maybe just some signage and public conversation could help that problem. We shouldn't be having those kinds of issues on our pedestrian right-of-ways.
Councilmember Rowe.
So do we have any signage up in downtown Olympia that says no skateboarding on sidewalks or
I don't know
biking?
I don't know if we do. We could look at that. I wasn't clear. Is that part of the referral to look at signage, or is it a question before you make a referral? Or?
I think we should make a referral to BPAC to just look into the whole idea, not just necessarily.
I don't know if we have any signage, and I'm looking at Rich. I don't know if we have. We don't think so, but we can get back to.
So a referral for BPAC to look into biking abuse on the sidewalks. I just think it needs to be, maybe some PR work for the public to know that you can't ride on. Maybe they don't know, some of the kids.
More discussion on the referral? No? Do we have consensus?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Councilmember Cooper, are you complete?
That's done. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Langer.
Yeah, I apologize. There were so many things here. I left one out. This was the item that Steve Lyons brought about the stream issue. And I do believe, I know the wetland that he's talking about that got taken off, somehow didn't appear on one of the two maps. And I'd actually like to find out a little bit more about that, because I think that's, that I hope that's not a wider problem, but I definitely think we should make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen when we do have a legitimate wetland that is properly protected.
Yeah, we'll find out if it was a real wetland, if it should have been on the map, and if it got taken off, why.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you all. I just have a few concluding comments. I certainly don't want to restate many of the things that have already been said, but I do want to say that I'm very much looking forward to what the advocates for the shelter that was proposed over on 10th Avenue will bring forward. I'd like to see the full statement when it's available. But more than that, I feel as though we've had a very helpful dialogue, and it hasn't always been comfortable, but the level of participation on this issue I have been impressed. And I feel as though we've been listening to each other. I want to commend the folks with Interfaith Works for being willing to listen to the community and change their direction, and I look forward to the next steps that come forward out of that process. I also would encourage folks to attend the forum on the 16th and voice your opinions about how this community should move forward in trying to respond to our homeless community. So thank you all for participating. Just one more comment to the folks with Fellowship for Reconciliation or other climate crisis group representatives. I'd just say that we are open to hearing more from you. If you'd like to submit some materials, that would be most welcome. I know that our staff has begun looking at this issue already, and I think that the council members clearly are asking for more information. So thanks to everyone for being here. I am glad that we extended our comment period to hear from all of you. So thank you so much. And with that, we move on to our consent calendar. Is there a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments, changes, or polls to the items on the calendar? Hearing none, all those in favor of passage of the consent calendar in its current form, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. I think it was unanimous. That moves us on to other business this evening, which is the comprehensive plan update deliberation process, and I believe we have a presentation from Todd Stamm.
You believe correctly. I don't know what we got behind us, Jay. The projector may have gone off. I'm going to start without him. Short version to bring you back to the business items of the evening, the business item of the evening. I first want to note here, my name's Todd Stamm, Principal Planner with Community Planning and Development Department.
And I thought everybody was here for your presentation.
Well, the press is here, and that's important. And sitting behind the press, I wanted to note, is our new Deputy Director of Community Planning, Leonard Bauer. You will be seeing him up here at the microphone quite a bit on this topic of the comprehensive plan in the coming months. A few months or many months, that's what we're about to talk about. So I wanted to note, this is, I'm going to hand off some of these duties to him in the coming weeks. Let me start with what we're doing here this evening. Staff report outlined for you that we had a comprehensive plan process, as Mr. Johnson noted, that started in 2009. I'm going to bring you the long story here to make sense of this. We started in 2009 with a fairly narrow scope, possibly with an idea of finishing by 2012, because that was the deadline the state gave us for updating our comprehensive plan. The state moved that deadline away from us to 2016. Many jurisdictions took that opportunity to say, there's a recession on, we've got better things to do than planning, and some of my colleagues were out of work. This community said, no, we're in the midst of a very important task here. Let's continue on. Let's take advantage of this additional time and extend the work we're planning on doing by a year, and we expanded the scope of the work we did. And those of us who have been working on that comprehensive plan update think we've done fairly good work with that time that was available. That led us to a target date for completing that work of this December. In June, you met with our Planning Commission and they handed off to you their recommendation. They closed their hearing about a year ago now. I think it was actually last October. So it's true, there's been this sort of dormant period here from a public perspective. But let's be straightforward. That dormant period is because since June, you've been talking about something called the Shoreline Master Program. And we've made a conscious decision to say we can't overlap these two major exercises. We think we see the light at the end of the tunnel now on the Shoreline Master Program, or at least the first tunnel. There's one called Ecology coming up too. But, and that we can now turn your attention to the comprehensive plan. That raises, and I noticed a bright light appeared behind me, there are three questions that come before you. And the Land Use Committee discussed these just a few days ago, and we bring to you their recommendation as well tonight, as well as the staff's. The target date right now, officially, is December. But we were to turn your attention to the comprehensive plan in June, and there was a schedule at that time that had a public outreach process, some neighborhood meetings, and hearings here in about October, around early October. It is going to be very difficult for us to reach that December target with it already being September. And so that's the first question for you tonight. Do we move to extend that time period by up to 6 months? And you'll notice that, and these, by the way, are not the exact same questions. Whoop, we're only got part of the questions. But these are not the exact same questions that, as in the staff report. The one in the staff, these are the simplified versions. But do we change the time frame here so that what we're looking at is, instead of finishing by December, finishing no later than June of next year? We're actually hopeful that we can finish before June of next year. I have to figure out how this thing goes up. That's as far as we get? Okay. We have to figure June at the latest. We are hopeful that we would bring you hearings on the comprehensive plan update in January, February, that time frame. How much longer it took after that would be up to the council. But that would mean that we could do the hearings on the comprehensive plan after you've gone through the budget cycle at the end of the year and all of the things that puts on your plate. I did want to address one of Mr. Johnson's comments. The public really does want to get to implementation. In fact, when we were talking about this 3-4 years ago with the public, a lot of what we heard was, the plan's fine, implement it. You haven't done enough about implementation. Put your efforts there. We're still hearing that. Changing this deadline or this target date to move it into next year does not change our ongoing efforts that we've already begun at taking some of the initial steps at implementation. We're already working on models for sub-area planning. We're already in progress with the Planning Commission of some related code amendments. All of that work will continue. There may be some minor adjustments in the schedule, but we're not stopping. All of those things are going to continue to proceed forward. So that's the first question before you. Do you want to try to finish by December as targeted? If we move to adoption next year, this becomes our comprehensive plan amendment in 2014. So we won't be processing other individual amendments independent of this. So it has a technical ramification. We didn't do any individual amendments this year because we thought we were finishing with this year. Now, a couple of related questions, and then I'll be happy to take yours. Number two is the question of, and this one is really dependent on the first one, if we slow down a bit here and we don't rush to a December finish, staff is recommending that we retain a plain talk or clear writing consultant. Plain talk is the state's guidelines for clear writing in documents. A consultant to go through the draft that the commission recommended to you to make suggestions organizationally, editorially, to see if we can make it even clearer. We think we've done a good job thus far, but it wouldn't hurt to take one more run at that and let someone outside of the writing team of 9 people that we had take a set of fresh eyes one last time before it comes to you for adoption. And then the third one is this feature of what do we do with this alternative called the May addendum that the Planning Commission handed you. It's been a long time since June. But a reminder, the Planning Commission made their recommendation on the comprehensive plan update to you in March. The remaining members, you had a lot of turnover, 5 remaining members and the 4 new members, continued a discussion of some aspects of their recommendation and made a different recommendation, which we're now calling the May addendum because it was attached to an addendum to the chair's cover letter, made a recommendation to you regarding that alternative. And it's a different proposal than what they made in March. The recommendation of the Land Use Committee was that alternative, the May addendum, be returned to the Planning Commission for further work and further review, and that they decide what to do with that and make a recommendation to you about that as soon as possible. And as soon as possible is going to be somewhat at the discretion of the Commission because Amy Buckler, liaison to the Planning Commission, has already been having conversations about how they might do that with the chair, Jerry Parker. But we have 6 new members who didn't work with the comprehensive plan update at all. And so how will they handle this question is sort of an open question. As soon as possible might be first meeting they look at it and go, this looks fine, let's give it back to the council, or they may want to take their time with it. Some of what they recommended is related to the sustainable Thurston issues that you heard about the other night, which won't really be final for a few months. So that one's a sort of loose end that we still need to know what to do with it. The staff's opinion is having 2 alternative recommendations in front of you at the same time is going to be a little bit of a struggle to keep clear for the public because of the differences, and you're accustomed to having this as the proposal. So the May addendum is out there. So that's the questions of the evening. Procedurally, we're ready to head for that December deadline if that's what you want to do, but our recommendation is that we move the target to no later than June so that we can do a little bit of public outreach. What we really want to do in terms of public outreach, by the way, I'm using T.J. Johnson's comments just as a jumping off place here. I'm not trying to be critical of his, but we're not intending to go to the public and say, oh, let's talk about the vision again. What we think we need to do is, it's been a year now, as it said, this has been a long process. We think we need to go back out to a public. We have an email list of 700 interested parties. Hold 2 or 3 or 4 neighborhood meetings and say, let us tell you what's in front of the council so that you can be prepared in January or February to tell the council what you think of it. We're not going backwards. We want to help the public be informed and participate in your process.
Thanks, Todd. Before I turn to other council member questions or comments, I'd like to turn to Councilmember Langer as chair of the Land Use Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So just to clarify a little bit about some of the things that we talked about at land use, the changing the timeline, the idea was because we've been working, it seems like almost endlessly on the SMP, that we really were unable to do the work that we otherwise would have done with the comprehensive plan. So it really, and I think it's a good document. I think it deserves our attention, and I think we should be deliberating on it in a way that really allows us as well as the public to fully understand what it is we're dealing with, what the changes are, and what that will mean for our future. I think the comprehensive plan, especially given that everybody here, I think, at the council is committed to actually implementing the comprehensive plan rather than have it being only an aspirational document, that it's really important that we give it its due. Now, on the other hand, in our discussion at our land use meeting, we also felt that June, we probably could get it done before June, and we were hoping to get it done before June, but that June was probably a good outer goal to look for, and that if we can get it done sooner, that would be even better. But that we do definitely need to give it the attention it deserves. In terms of the clear writing consultant, we asked the Planning Commission chair and the other members that were present what they thought about us doing that. They thought it would be a useful addition, so we recommended, therefore, that it go through that review before it's passed on. One of the criticisms of the SMP was that it wasn't clearly written, and I think that whatever, if that's true or not, I think putting it through this additional review of somebody who hasn't been involved in the process, I think will make it a better document. So I think, and it doesn't take a lot of time and it doesn't take a lot of money, so I think it's well worth doing. And I really see that as a fairly minor issue, much less important than the timing. But also, in my opinion, reviewing the May addendum, and I don't know how many of you have seen it, but I think it's a real improvement on the March version of the comprehensive plan, and yet at the same time, some of the issues that were brought up in the May addendum weren't really fully worked out. So there really are some issues there that I think need to be addressed and need to be given attention by the Planning Commission. So I think it's important for the Planning Commission to review that, refine it, and then get it back to us as soon as possible, hopefully by February of this coming year, so that we will be looking at a unitary comprehensive plan recommendation as much as possible that then we can review, involve the public with, and then hopefully pass as soon as possible in the new year.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Member Pro Tem Jones. 2 quick questions. Todd, are we able to do the clear writing consultant within the current budget, or are we talking about a new?
It's well within the current budget. Thank you for hiring our new hearing examiner, or saving us professional services.
Saving us some money. Okay, great. That's wonderful. And then the last piece, I'm supportive of all 3 of these, particularly around the May addendum. Is that addendum was approved by a majority of a quorum of the existing planning commission at the moment?
It was, in fact, I believe it was unanimous, although to speak frankly, the 4 new members, 1 or 2 of them, it was their first meeting.
Okay.
And all 4 of the new members were not involved in the comprehensive plan update, so
okay,
you can
that makes sense.
do weight to what that means, but I believe they all did vote for it eventually.
Okay, 'cause I think it's a lot better too, but I'm okay with it getting flushed out a little bit more if that's the agreement of the council. I want to caution us not to be saying there's 2. If the planning commission voted, they changed it. The old one is dead.
No. I need to be clear. They did not substitute it. In their record, it is
It's
an
not a
alternative.
substitution.
No, it is an alternative.
That's a good clarification. Thank you very much.
The document online reflects what the commission did in March.
Yes, Councilmember Hankins.
The reason I'm supportive of this is because our intent is pretty clear and pretty narrow. We want the public to have the best information possible in order to make a decision and give us the input we need to make a really good document. And so by extending the time, we're very specific. We're going out to the community to educate, to give them the information they need so they can give us really good feedback. We're looking for clear writing, which again is giving us we'll get a better feedback on it. And then the May addendum, by clearing that up and coming up with the best document possible, sounds like a really good solution and a good thing we should be striving for. So as long as we keep the intent, I think we can stay under that deadline.
Other council comments? I have a few of my own. First of all, welcome to Leonard Bauer. Glad to have you aboard. Thank you very much. I wanted to say that in looking at the staff report and the schedule for a December adoption, it appears to me to be very rushed and very awkward. And so I feel that the June 14 drop dead date is the way to go. And if we can beat that date, we should. But to try to compress this into a December timeframe, I think, is inappropriate at this time. I'm definitely in support of as much clarity as we can possibly achieve in bringing this to the public. And with regard to the May addendum, I've already heard some very positive words towards the work that is in that addendum. In my reading of it, I think there's some good thoughts there as well. I agree that it needs some additional work. My concern is that I think that we need to be very clear with the Commission about an expected time frame for them to complete their process. And I would suggest that February as a target date for them to deliver the completion of their process will help us move this process forward. And I need to check in, perhaps with Councilmember Langer and also with staff. Todd, if you can respond to a particular date proposal if you see that as problematic.
Yes. Well, when we had the Planning Commission members at the land use meeting, we agreed that early February would make sense as far as delivering that change or that addendum to us in a refined and fleshed out version. So I think that that's pretty reasonable what you're suggesting, and I think it's doable by the Commission. They may have to shuffle a few things around, but this is important stuff, and I think should have a priority based on moving this thing along and getting it to the full council in a form that I think will be a new and improved version.
The tentative calendar that the Commission's worked out with staff would conclude by December. Partly because we don't do this over the holidays, but it's also because we're trying to move your hearing as early as we can in 2014, and so that you have as much time to deliberate in that June deadline. And if the Commission's going to forward you a recommendation that is an alternative or competing with the one that they forwarded in March, that needs to be forwarded to you before we go to hearing. We can't bring that into the field once we're in the hearing mode. So we think bringing December is a very reasonable time frame. It's still 3-4 months of. They did the first version of this in 5 weeks. So
Great. Just one other thing that comment from me is I just want to reiterate what I heard you say this evening is that by shifting this, the council's calendar, we're not interfering with the commission's work towards implementation. And I see that you've provided us with a pretty clear calendar of events that the commission is moving through, identifying target dates for their work, moving us towards implementation. So I find that reassuring that by our delaying our action and the completion of our work is not interfering with moving towards implementation.
I'll give you the full and honest answer. There may be some minor adjustments we're going to have to make. We're moving calendars around and things. There are no substantial changes that result from this. No, we're continuing on all fronts just as if you're still working on a December calendar.
Other council comments or questions? Is there a motion?
Do we need a motion? My sense is that having a
You can just have consensus on the city manager's recommendation.
Yeah.
I believe we've achieved that. Yes. Good. Thanks very much.
Well, and as the chair of land use, thank you for trusting us in our deliberations and working that through too. I always appreciate that.
That brings us to council members' reports and referrals. And what I'd like to do would be to just start at one end of the dais and work our way through. And I'll bat last.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. So just a quick update from the Home Consortium this week. We did a recommendation to the Thurston County Board of Commissioners for the consolidated homeless grants. And I'll just read quickly through that recommendation. It totals $558,283. Community Action Council, TBRA funds, rental assistance for $90,000. Community Youth Services Haven House Program, $10,000. Community Youth Services Shelter from the Storm, which is their new youth shelter, $20,000. Family Support Centers Family Support Shelter, $55,000. Family Support Centers Rapid Rehousing, $115,000. The Housing Authority's Emergency Apartment Program, $140,000. Interfaith Work Sidewalk Rapid Rehousing Program, another $88,283. Safe Place Emergency Shelter Operations and Maintenance, $30,000. And Yom Community Services Homeless Shelter, $10,000. And just will say that while I voted in support of this, I made it with some pretty firm comments, and I'm hoping that the Home Consortium can begin to resolve these at our retreat next month. In the last 5 months, in the last 6 months, we've had 5 RFPs totaling multi-millions of dollars. And while we did a good job using the homeless gaps analysis that was done by the homeless coordinator, I still feel like we're lacking any strategy or tactics in our funding. And as you can see from, I believe maybe quote Councilmember Langer in this peanut butter approach, that it's concerning to me, and I said that to the Home Consortium, and I'm hoping that we can figure out a different way to do it. One thing that will help is the staff is proposing one RFP next year for all 5 funding sources, and that would then allow there would be start dates in September and January, I believe, based on the funding cycles. But one RFP that gives us the ability to prioritize and be strategic about our choices. And then the other question I asked the Home Consortium to battle with at the retreat is how many nonprofits are we? Well, first of all, in this funding round, how many of our baseline services in the community are we reducing funding of their operations and maintenance by going in new directions, or by making sure that we're not underfunding things that we didn't fund in the last. So essentially like a bow wave of not funding essential services. A couple of core services in downtown have had dramatic reductions in their O&M, and I won't go into that detail right now. But then the other question is, how many nonprofits is the county government keeping open? And how many, and are they truly coming back and demonstrating that they are able to raise money from other places, including private donors and foundations and other jurisdictions, as they apply for multiple funding sources and are awarded them again and again and again. And it's a little bit of a system problem, I think, and at least warrants having the conversation. And I'm not saying that we don't stop doing good things, but I'm saying that we need to have a better conversation as a region, as we've been saying all year.
Any questions for Councilmember Cooper? Councilmember Langer.
I appreciate your critique of the program. I guess I really agree that we need a comprehensive program. We need to stop sort of passing out pixie dust and really having a coordinated program where the different agencies work together to create a comprehensive program that deals with the gaps analysis in a constructive way that the county put out. And I'm concerned that it's easy to sort of slip back into our old ways of giving money to organizations that may be wonderful organizations, but I think that our obligation is to make sure that it all works together as much as possible, a seamless whole, rather than having these different programs doing things that are at times overlapping, at times maybe not proven to be very useful, other things that may in fact be very powerful interventions getting less funding because we're passing it out to some of the organizations that may not have shown that what they're doing really makes much of a dent. So I really appreciate your being on that, and I guess by saying what I'm saying, I'd like to strengthen your resolve to keep on that message with them and make sure that when money is allocated, that it's done in such a way where one of the criteria is that everybody can prove how what they're adding, that what they are doing is adding to a comprehensive program that is coordinated rather than simply one more thing that somebody happens to do.
So thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Langer. It actually reminded me of the other comment I made when I, grudgingly voted yes, and that was that we don't require any collaboration or coordination at all amongst these entities that we're funding, and that should be a fundamental piece of the funding, is that you have to be at the table with your like services so that we're getting consistency and a collaborative effort across the region. So thank you.
Hallelujah.
Councilmember Cooper, just a question on my own behalf. So am I right that there's a multi-year countywide homeless service plan? I heard you say that you're responding to the coordinator's gaps analysis and things that have been developed more recently, but isn't there a multi-year plan in place?
So we do have a 10-year plan to end homelessness, and that is in the process of being redone. That's one of the things that's on the homeless coordinator's plate. And so it's almost over, and not very in alignment with the gaps analysis. The other piece is that, as far as I know, I haven't seen what our plan is or what the document is for looking at affordable housing, which is also the charge of the Home Consortium, and we've been consumed by a homelessness conversation this year. But, in conversation I had last week with the county health director, Don Saloma, we have a significant number of people in our community that are house poor and that are paying more than 50% of their income to maintain their shelter. And that's not a sustainable solution for a community. So we need to get ahead of that so that our homeless numbers don't get worse in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Langer, your report.
Okay. I guess Todd Stam stole part of my thunder here for the Land Use and Environment Committee meeting. One of our big discussion points, of course, was the comprehensive plan update deliberation process. Don't you love these this is plain talk at work, by the way. Another sort of major item we had was a discussion with industry representatives on the alcohol impact area. And frankly, I was unpleasantly surprised by our interaction because I found that there was a fair amount of evasiveness, disingenuousness, and some actually things that they said that simply weren't true. And so it was difficult to sort some of that out, and I was really disappointed that we didn't have a more, how should I put it, direct sort of across the board discussion about things. And so I felt that we could have done better with that, and I hope that we continue to discuss these issues with them with a little bit, I don't know how to say this, a little bit less of that sort of thing happening, and just being able to just talk about things straightforwardly and without any bobbing and weaving. And I think our staff has been doing a very good job of documenting what's going on in the downtown, what the problems are, and that some of the solutions that the industry seems to be offering is unlikely to work. And so we need to continue to talk to them, of course, and I look forward to us going to the Liquor Control Board in the future and showing them that we are making efforts to work with the industry and trying to come up with something that is in fact workable, and if we have to, that we do a mandatory program, and that we're not willing to settle for something that's voluntary but meaningless. So that said, we also had a status report on the downtown master plan, and talked about the Planning Commission taking on one more thing, which was the scoping, and I want to emphasize that word, scoping, for the downtown master plan process. So we talked about membership of the committee, potential membership of this committee that would get together to talk about sort of what we should be looking at and how. And then we also talked about some of the timing issues that we would, let's see here, we essentially agreed that it was fine to do a scoping, but that didn't mean that it committed us to any particular action yet in terms of the actual plan. But that we kind of need to know what's the ball field we're playing in. Then in terms of the Downtown Ambassador Program, Brian Wilson and Rob Richards, Brian Wilson gave the report, but Rob Richards helped with it. And they've been doing what's called an Operation Deep Clean, which is actually going to different blocks in downtown and doing a deep clean of that particular block. And so there's a rotation now of blocks downtown where instead of just kind of on the surface doing things that they go in there and really clean up one particular block and put an emphasis on that and then move on to the next one and so on, as a way to really have more of an impact on the downtown area. And that includes things like pressure washing sidewalks and walls, removal of stickers and flyers, cleaning garbage cans, recycling bins inside and out, graffiti abatement, sweeping gutters, clearing grates, washing windows, and so on. So really an effort to really spruce up an area and kind of bring it back to what we want, as well as taking care of other problems as they come along. And then we had a discussion about the People's House issues, but then that's kind of been superseded by our discussion tonight, so I don't think we need to go into that. Finally, we talked about we had an ad hoc community renewal area committee meeting, and in fact, I'm just wondering, I've been talking so much, perhaps the Mayor Pro Tem and I can engage in that a little bit when it comes to the Mayor Pro Tem's report. So that's all for me for now.
Questions for Councilmember Langer? I have one, and that is there a schedule for the next engagement with the liquor industry?
City Manager Hall. What was our? What was our plan for that? I know that that you as the city manager and staff are continuing to engage. But could you remind us of what's happening next?
I'm sorry, ask the question again.
What are our next steps with AIA and the
actually,
liquor?
Brian Wilson just did a summary of the date you'll be getting on that. So there are some things we're doing internally with regard to the AIA, which is continuing to document not only our meetings with the industry representatives on the voluntary program, but we're also continuing to collect data about debris, about chronic inebriants, that sort of thing. So we're moving forward to make a presentation to the Liquor Control Board sometime, I assume, after October 8th. That's the deadline they gave us for working on this program. We don't yet have a date. We don't know if there'll be a public hearing yet or whether they'll just take additional testimony or materials from the city. We're also outlining what members of the public can do, because we've heard from business owners and others who support an alcohol impact area that they want to be involved as well. So we're putting together a list of things they can do, including helping us to continue to document the conditions in downtown with regard to chronic inebriants, with debris that they leave behind, with interactions with those folks. And then we will, when we hear, tell them whether or not they'll be allowed to submit testimony or show up at another hearing at Liquor Control Board. So those are two fronts we're working on. And as Councilmember Langer mentioned, we're continuing to try and find a viable voluntary program that we're at least worth trying, willing to try. So,
thanks for that. I'm wondering, is there a next step then with industry representatives that's scheduled at this point?
There is actually. This Friday we're meeting with industry representatives, and we met as staff on Monday, and we decided rather than, I think this is what Councilmember Langer, rather than kind of futzing around with something we don't think is going to work, we want to put on the table a voluntary program we think is worth considering. And so we've got a few elements to that include perhaps banning everything over certain alcohol content. That's our first choice. If that doesn't work, talk about extending the hours where single-serve multi-packs of high alcohol content would not be allowed from, say, 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and also monitoring the sales and also the chronic inebriants. So there's kind of two packages we want to put together and share with the liquor industry on Friday, and we'll let you know how that goes.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rowe, your report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. So I have a longer list, but it will go quickly because I missed the last meeting. And, you guys didn't give reports last time anyway, did you? No. Okay, so I just wanted to acknowledge that I attended the Enterprise for Equity graduation and event on August 21st, and every participant had something related to ag. And it was just really a great event. They actually had 2 graduations this year, and Lisa Smith, who's in charge of it, I just wanted to give her kudos out there because it was just a fascinating evening where they served the food. They have everything from someone harvesting and eating rabbits, and that was a hard one for me. I had to skip that booth, but it was just a really broad variety of farming, agriculture issues, and bringing it into Olympia. And they held it at right behind the library at the park. What did they call that?
Is it Common Grounds?
Yes, the Common Ground, yeah. And it was just a lovely event, so. And good job to all of them, and good luck. Also, I just wanted to acknowledge the great work, the Sand in the City, the Hands-on Children's Museum, that they just deserve huge applaud for that event. It was, I was down there at that, and such an excellent job and so much fun for the kids and adults as well. It's a great community event. I then just want to say briefly that I did get ill after our last land use meeting. Very ill.
Was it me?
Yeah. And so I did miss the last Tuesday night meeting, and I have to say, for those out there in the viewing world, if you ate any Chobani yogurt that was tainted, I'm not sure if that's what came first, but I was unfortunately eating some bad yogurt on top of being violently ill. So I spent a day in the hospital. So when you guys were going over the SMP, so some people said, "Oh, maybe that was better." I go, "No." Anyway, good job on the last meeting. Also, the Bow Wow Boogie, which is the event to raise money for our joint Thurston County Animal Shelter, was again held for the 4th year at Ralph Monroe's home. They raised almost $9,000 this year, which is huge. It's a group of animal lovers that come every year and have a great time. Also, I attended the VCB Oktoberfest, which I believe Councilmember Hankins will probably say something about. And Councilmember Langer, we were there. It was a first-time fundraising event for the Visitors and Convention Bureau, but I'll let Councilmember Hankins say more about that. Tonight we had General Government met, and we also had an update from the Ambassador Program. But it was a very, very in-depth, 1-hour-long update that was just an excellent presentation. They are focusing on outreach to the community. The two ambassadors, Renata and Chelsea, are two younger women who are new on board, and if you see them out in the community, they're wearing bright red jackets and khaki pants. They have some new outfits, some new energy, and they're, I think, doing a great job in reaching out not only to those in our community that are homeless, but also and needing maybe some help and direction to a social service agency, but they're also helping direct visitors to Olympia, to restaurants, where to park, how to work the pay stations that will soon be gone, and just a diverse amount of questions that people are really appreciating having them out there. The clean team is what Council Member Langer was referring to, and they are indeed doing a great job. We were given pictures tonight of some of the tremendous jobs that they have to clean up, and I won't put these on the screen, although I should have thought of this earlier. They are, at some point, we are going to have to thank them publicly and have them come in, because their job is really quite something to clean up some of the messes that are found in downtown Olympia. And one exciting thing is they have a new machine that is a soda blaster. It actually uses soda that they can remove graffiti from bricks. With no chemicals, it just blasts it right out of the bricks. So that's great. And they also will be having the green machine eventually will come back on board, which will be cleaning the sidewalks. So, and we were all just very pleased and proud of the hard work that they're all doing. There's just 3 of them, and they just work their little hearts out every day to try to make downtown a better place for all of us. And they have come up with a map of the whole city and getting very organized in how they're approaching the cleanup. And I believe that's about all. It was a good hour-long presentation, so it was very helpful to hear. Our second topic was naming the recommendation for the Artesian Well Park site. Our Parks and Rec board got together and discussed it, and they came up with the name Artesian Commons, and that will be coming forward to the council in the near future, and they will give a brief summary and of how they came to that decision and the other names that were considered. And then we ran out of time for staff to do their oral reports. We did get a very brief report on the street repair and reconstruction program and our need to be putting the money into the roads continually. And as the roads degrade, it only becomes more and more expensive to get them back up to the level that we want them at. So that's putting it in a very short nutshell. And then it was a building repair and replacement fund update that we didn't get to really hear at all, which we will probably hear at another time from staff. So it was a great meeting. And let's see. Oh, I wanted to also make a referral to general government. I would like us to have a discussion on restrooms in downtown Olympia. And I just would like to have the information that perhaps the Finance Committee discussed and other issues, other ideas to come forward to general government so that we can have a further discussion and just maybe brainstorm about some options that we can possibly do. I know it's a very challenging topic, but after hearing what our ambassadors are cleaning up on a daily basis, and we just need to do something. And I'm not sure what the answer is, so I'd like to refer that to general government. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the passing away of our Olympia Downtown Association President, Tracy Knodsman, passed away a couple weeks ago. And she died tragically, and I believe she was in her early 40s, and just want to pass my condolences along to the members of ODA, and I know in particular Jeannie Karras, who was quite close to her. So we send our best wishes to her family and friends. That's it.
Thank you. Comments or questions for Councilmember Rowe? Councilmember Hankins.
Thank you. Last Wednesday, the TCOM, which is Thurston County 911, had a meeting. We're discussing budget at this time of the year, so that's what you need to know on that one. Saturday night was the Tumwater Beer Fest, Oktoberfest, and the Visitor and Convention Bureau, the VCB. It was a joint effort with Tumwater, the City of Tumwater, to actually put this first-time event together. They did a really great job, and I'm really proud of the VCB because we all participated, which means all the different jurisdictions. That organization is made up of all the local jurisdictions plus a lot of hoteliers and other tourist organizations, and they came together to help another community, and we did a really great job that night. Learned a lot about pouring things. So the other thing you need to know is, CNA was last night, the steering committee for the Coalition of Neighborhood Associations, and this kind of follows on what we were talking about earlier. The CNA is actually in the process of finalizing an implementation strategy for sub-area planning to go to the Land Use Committee on October 24th. So that's another piece of that implementation piece that will be coming forward. Second thing is they will be having a budget forum on October 29th, Budget 365. They'll have educational materials, and it's describing the budget, the challenges and solutions, and it's an opportunity for questions and answers. So keep that date on your calendar. And the third thing is they will be producing a 2014 action plan, which they're developing, and that will include an evaluation of the MOU, which we have with them, as well as recommended action steps for the next year, and they'll finalize that in December, and it will come to us. So thank you.
Thank you. Please, any questions for Councilmember Hankins?
I do have a question. Who is doing the budget update?
The CNA is going to have a budget forum, and that's with the mayor and the staff.
Okay, so it will be mayor and staff doing a budget forum. And do you know when and where?
It's October 29th. It will be here, as far as I know, in this room.
So.
I think that's usually where.
And it's actually the whole finance committee.
Oh, it's a finance committee doing it as well. So,
but can anyone come?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
it's a
we'll
new
advertise it
conversation.
as a regular meeting of the full city council.
A full council.
It'll
Okay.
be 1 week after I deliver my proposed 2014 budget, so it'll be a little bit about 2014, but mostly about the city's general financial condition and budget choices.
Okay, so it'll be a full council meeting. And then I'm just curious, did you find out how much was raised at the Oktoberfest?
we haven't yet. We'll be having a meeting in another week or two, and then we'll know how much, and we'll see how successful an event it was and how many people attended.
Yep. So anyway, yeah, George Sharp did an amazing job with the VCB. So,
Any other questions for Councilmember Hankins? Okay, so I have a little longer report than usual this evening, but I'll try to be as brief as I can. I want to fill you in on a recent September 4th intercity transit meeting, and basically the main theme of that meeting had to do with federal activity relative to the federal transportation bill and its impact on transit. So you may recall that the federal program is referred to as MAP 21. That's the Federal Transportation Program. It was a significant surprise when Congress was able to get it together to pass a new transportation bill, and that went into effect just a year ago. That funding was authorized for only a 2-year period. So we already are looking ahead to September of 2014 for new transportation funding authorization. And while we may be just looking at a continuing resolution, I think that's probably the most likely outcome. What I would like you to know is that in MAP 21, the support for mid-sized transit agencies like intercity transit was significantly reduced. And so intercity transit has had to slow a number of the programs that it had planned, including both bus replacement and the Pattison Transit Base renewal and expansion. Those programs are inching along at this point. I think the other thing that is worthwhile to know is that much of MAP 21 relies upon the Highway Trust Fund, and the Highway Trust Fund has been in financial straits for several years now, and this relates to its reliance upon the gas tax and the changes in miles per gallon for the average vehicle. So the transit funding is a set aside within the Highway Trust Fund. So I'm just wanting to give you some big picture look at what one of our sister agencies and one of our important partners is facing. So that meeting was, and that briefing was on September 4th. On September 5th, I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee meeting. They dealt with the Capital Facilities Plan funding recommendation to the Planning Commission, and particularly with their asset management component of that. And they recognized that the capital expenditure levels are very limited for 2014, and they went ahead and approved a pretty limited program. And so there was some hard discussion about what has happened, frankly, to parks funding over the years in Olympia, and particularly capital funding. And then, as Councilmember Rowe reported, they also held a public hearing and took action on selecting a name for the artesian well lot, and so that will be coming to the council. On September 6th, I attended the Thurston Regional Planning Council's meeting, where we received an update on the South Sound travel study, and this involves an extensive survey for the travel patterns of households within Thurston County. A major portion of that survey has been mailed out already. Many residents and households in Olympia have already received that material. And I wanted to pass on, particularly to the listening audience, that the survey is blind and that it will protect against any privacy concerns that folks may have. They're asking basically they're asking what travel people are making, what their destinations are on a given day. And some of that may be private information. So I just want to make sure that it's protected. In addition to that, I want to encourage people to participate in that survey. It really is an important part of planning for the future of transportation in our county. And then just also to report that I was selected to serve on the Thurston Regional Planning Council's 2014 Work Program Development Subcommittee. So Then on September 9th, and thank you for bearing with me, on behalf of the mayor, I attended the Sustainable Thurston Task Force meeting. And there is a milestone with the Sustainable Thurston process. They are coming to conclusion. And what the task force was dealing with on Monday the 9th, yesterday, was looking at this large set of goals and actions that have been laid out. This is a 30-year look into the future, and this is complex. I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is that although they are coming to conclusion, the public comment period is open until October 2nd, and they have allowed public comment to come in a very simple form. If you just want to participate in an online survey, it's very easy to do by going to the regional council's website, or certainly providing more specific written comments. That is actually pretty easy to do as well on the website. But I think the message that I want to bring to you is that just as our discussions with the comprehensive plan in Olympia, the challenge of these big planning documents is implementation. And while the task force has identified a series of first steps towards implementation, there is a lot of conversation and coordination that needs to go on. Issues of governance, issues of regional leadership, and how jurisdictions and nonprofits and private entities are going to work together to achieve the goals that have been laid out. I think some of this does relate to the council's own work program. It certainly relates to our community planning and development efforts. So we've talked about the interface with our comprehensive planning. But I think that it's important to recognize the level of investment that this community has made in this plan and in this sustainability analysis, and that this is a very valuable piece of work that should not be squandered. We need to take advantage of the work that's been done, and we need to do our part as a city in working with our other partners to carry that forward. So I have one more report for you, and that was foreshadowed by my partner up here. Would like to give you an update on the ad hoc community renewal committee. And that committee is made up of Councilmember Langer, Mayor Buxbaum, and myself. And the first thing I think is worth acknowledging is that there are a number of things that this committee is working on. You might remember that we recently brought to you a report on the schedule requirements for the first loan underneath the HUD Section 108 loan program. And the response from this council was to move forward with a project to remove blight on the isthmus. So you entrusted us with the Section 108 program. That's one thing that we've been working on. We also have been working on an RFQ for the Community Development Improvement Project, and this is looking at community planning and development and in some ways reinventing that aspect of the city's work. And that RFP process began actually in our June retreat. We discussed that RFP. The committee worked on it in June, and I expect that RFP will be coming back to us for action before long, and it will come back to the full council as well. And then also the committee has met with the leadership team of the Planning Commission relatively recently, and we discussed the connection between the Community Renewal Project, the Comprehensive Plan Update, the Downtown Master Plan, Sub-Area Planning, Development Regulations, and Design Review Regulations. And I think we had a very useful conversation, but I think that those issues of how these things mesh together, how they mesh in terms of work program and implementation, is an ongoing conversation. And I think you'll be hearing more about that, not just from the ad hoc committee, but also from land use committee and from other work that's going on. So I think that basically what we're talking about is the Planning Commission's work program and how it interacts with the rest of our committees and our efforts. But I wanted to let you know that that ad hoc committee has been involved in that discussion as well. And then finally, and I think the part that Councilmember Langer and I want to sort of throw some ideas back and forth on is really the focus of the committee. So aside from these other pieces that we've been working on, we really have been working on developing an action plan for community renewal. And you have been briefed on this, but I just want to reiterate some of that. I want to relay some of the foundation of where we've been in this process. We started by looking community-wide at 6 potential redevelopment areas. And those included the old landfill site on the west side, Kaiser and Harrison, Division and Harrison, the downtown area, Pacific and Martin, and Sleater Kinney and Martin. And with consultant support, that analysis looked at the tools available to the city to help get properties unstuck and moving them from basically economic stasis to productivity. And the underlying interest in all of this is community economic development and moving the community forward in a renewal process. And the report that came out of that, we refer to that as Component A, the look at these 6 different areas. That final report is in draft form and will be coming forward to the council before long. It looks at different development scenarios for each of those potential areas. It analyzed market conditions and what our consultants called the realities of these different areas. It also engaged stakeholders to help gauge project feasibility in each one of those areas. And so that report is expected to come forward with an action plan for next steps on how to deal with those 6 areas. The other thing that the ad hoc committee has done is establish a broad spectrum citizens advisory committee that has been active in the process. They were some of the stakeholders who were interviewed in this earlier process, but as we are digging deeper, they are becoming more engaged and more involved in the committee's process. And we have moved into Component B, which is to focus on downtown renewal. And so there is a more refined market analysis related to downtown and a more refined look at those tools which are available to the city, again, to kickstart or to get unstuck some of the properties in the downtown area. And so it's our intent in this process to develop a community renewal plan for downtown, and we will work with the consultant team and the Citizens Advisory Committee in doing that. It's our intent to provide regular updates to the full council, and that's part of what I'm trying to do tonight, is to keep you informed of our progress. I think these are, I know these are significant considerations that this committee is undertaking, and it's important to keep all of us engaged in this. We are tentatively scheduled now to have the consultant come and brief the full council on October 1st. And so we are targeting that. And just to also say that we will continue to work closely with the Citizens Advisory Committee throughout the entire process. So how'd I do? I'm sure there's some voids and gaps in that.
Well, yeah, I thought that was actually a very nice summary of kind of where we've been and hopefully where we're going. A couple of points. You talked early on about the Section 108 loan program, and And we're dealing with federal regulations, and it's actually all pretty complicated, and you're dealing with the home consortium, so you get a pretty full dose of that, I assume, also. And so by scheduling the first loan under the HUD Section 108 loan program, what we're doing is we're triggering the capacity to borrow. So, and it also locks in the amount of money that we can borrow. So rather than, and it looks like in future years that amount of money will decrease. So if we lock it in now, we get this amount rather than a lower amount later. So it's actually important that we get this done, just given how federal regulations work. And so I just wanted to sort of let people know that there's a very clear pathway that we're taking that is determined by how the federal regulations operate to get the maximum amount of available money for the Section 108 funding for the city. So it's really to our advantage to get that going, trigger that process, and lock in the amount of money that will be less if we did it later. The other thing is that the thing that really excites me about doing this, and I know it seems sort of like this dry, boring process, but kind of looking at it big picture, what we're really looking at here is redevelopment of already urban areas. So we're talking about making the community better rather than just sort of spreading it out more. And I think this is one of the goals that I think we as a city ought to have, is to really improve the economic conditions, but not by sort of developing more green fields, but actually going back and redeveloping areas that have sort of fallen into a place where they're not really generating the kind of economic activity that is possible. So we're really maximizing what we have and making the most of the assets that we have that are currently underutilized. So I just want to kind of pull back and just point out that that's a big reason why I think this sort of thing makes sense and really allows us to do some exciting things for the city that I think will also benefit the city far into the future when we get these things into place. And then involving the Citizens Advisory Council, I think, is a really important piece of this as well. That is that we get buy-off from and participation from folks who will be directly affected by this. And that includes business owners, nonprofits, and other people and organizations that can really help us to do this kind of redevelopment, and that we need to bring them all to the table to make that happen, because we can't do it by ourselves. In fact, we don't want to do it by ourselves, because when we can get the other entities involved, we really can make some good things happen that we can't do all the heavy lifting ourselves. So this process allows us to really make something happen with a whole number of people and work with them in ways that normally we would not be able to. So with the CRA, we're able to partner in ways that we otherwise couldn't. And so that's, I think, another piece that I just want to remind the council and the public that is watching that that's why we're doing this, so that we can really make Olympia, just a whole lot better than it is currently, and really revitalize some important areas around town.
Yeah, Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you for all the hard work you guys have done. I'm just curious if maybe we've reached the end of it being ad hoc, and that it should be the full council in this, now that we've gotten this far. I'm particularly interested in the downtown renewal portion of it now. And I guess I personally would rather be more involved in the decision making and what's going on. I appreciate your report, but I'd rather be part of it and part of the process. And so I don't know if at this point it would be better I don't know what the plan was for how long the ad hoc committee would be in place. I thought it eventually would de-hawk. It would de-hawk, and that the entire council would be more involved. I just think it's some pretty critical topics that you guys are discussing that should be full council. So I don't know if we can just change it from ad hoc to full hawk, and for those who can make it, and if not, I don't know what your thoughts are.
So you'd like to see Mohawk?
This is getting bad. You can tell it's past 10 o'clock.
Councilmember Langer.
Well, I think that it is really important that the whole council be involved in these decisions. But just like general government and land use and what's that?
Finance.
And finance. Oh yeah, finance. That committee. That some of these things do need to kind of be sort of pre-digested a bit, because they are some fairly complex things that are difficult, I think, to work out with 7 people at the dais. And so I appreciate your wanting to be involved. In fact, I've said this before, that I really regret no longer being on the finance committee, because it's such an important committee, and I wish that I could participate more.
And I kind of regret giving up my seat on this ad hoc to Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Which I did.
Right.
Would you like to negotiate?
I know.
Is there chocolate involved?
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that the entire 7 of us would even necessarily want to participate. I just am finding it frustrating. If I want to go and listen in or be a part of it, I'm not allowed to, because you can't have more than...
Well, you are. I mean, I think we just have to notice it, but in fact, I would welcome any of the other council members.
Maybe that's just the change we need to make, is that
to do
other
that.
members are welcome to attend.
Yeah.
I can't go to a finance meeting.
Yes, you can.
I have to know.
Yeah,
I
it
can't
has to
just
be noticed.
pop in and just say, it has to be so many hours notice and,
Right.
right?
Right, but hey, it's just a potential meeting, so if you don't show up, well, then it isn't.
Well, for my case then, in this ad hoc one, I would just like it to be a Mohawk, and have everyone included if they wanted to be.
Other comments?
Well, I wonder if maybe one of the things to do too would be something we've done on general government, which is that we sort of exchange members. That sometimes one member, like that maybe you could replace me for a meeting. Although I'm always reluctant to miss one of these meetings, because then I feel like I'm missing out too.
I wouldn't want you to miss it, though.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll just work it out to where if I wanted to attend, I guess
Yeah.
I can attend. I just thought this to me just seems like a bigger, just something big. The whole council should be potentially more involved in, but it's getting late, so.
Well, and we also have fairly extensive meeting minutes, and I'm always happy to respond to any questions you might have about what the minutes say, because we are pretty clear about what it is that we've been talking about and what we're looking at. So that's another avenue, and this goes for the public as well, not just for other council members. People should be welcome to review our minutes and then ask good questions.
Yeah, Councilmember Cooper.
I'm glad you said that about the minutes, because it actually brought up a question I've had and I've forgotten to ask. Is there a way we can get within Legistar a category for that ad hoc committee so you can search and find? Because it's not possible at the moment.
I think we can. Let us check that and see.
Good point. I've tried to search it myself. You can get there, but it takes time. Other comments? No. Mr. City Manager, your report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jones. I have one brief item. We, as you know, sometimes sell bonds to fund projects, and so we needed some money for our water utilities, so we sold bonds. And the good news is, the really good news is, we got 11 bids for our bonds, and the interest rate that we will pay is 2.61%, which seems kind of boring, but the reason we got so many bids and such great interest rates is that the bond buyers and the bond raters said that we had strong fiscal management policies as a city organization and reliable operational management. And so it's really a tribute to the city's strong leadership in this area that we're able to get lots of bids and really low rates. And so thanks to Jane Kirkamo, Rich Hoy, Clark Halverson, and the council for having a really strong position that allows us to borrow money at a really good rate. So that's all I have this evening.
Any questions for the city manager? Yes, Councilmember Langer.
So I'm curious how much money we saved by getting this rate as opposed to the rate that, say, another city our size might have.
That's a good question. We can take a look at that and see. I think I'd be curious to know too, because I think I know that other cities have had bonds in like 3.5%, and so we're almost a full percent below some of the other bond sales. So I can look at that and get you a number.
That'd be great.
So I just want to acknowledge that what looked like a very brief agenda this evening, actually we had some great public comment and I think some good discussion. So thank you all. And with that, having no further business before the Olympia City Council, we stand adjourned.